transitioning in. Transition and boom! Welcome to the Roaming Self podcast. Tommy. Discord. What?
He's on Discord apparently.
Oh, you're on Discord? You need to be in freaking. You need to be in Skype, man. Skype, homie. That's how we doing this. By the way, I got some potato salad.
Potato salad. I had potato salad and sausages I cooked up today.
Nice. Yeah. I'm waiting on the hot dog thing. But right now I got Chipotle potato salad.
All right. So.
Yeah, let's get into it.
First topic, then. Let's get going. For those of you who haven't heard, Mini AOC, this really cute little 8-year-old girl, she does great imitations of Ocasio-Cortez. And it's hardcore parody, making fun of her and her positions and how ditzy she is. She's made several really good videos and has made the news a few times. The parents announced here in the last couple of days that I guess they're going to stop doing that. They're taking down all the content because they've been getting death threats from the left and everything.
Really?
Death threats to a little girl.
Really? Damn.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They're saying that the abuse they're getting is pretty heinous and so forth. So, yeah. I mean, so we can't even make fun of each other now. I mean, you know, you hear about this. Comedians getting heckled and yelled at for making political jokes and things like that.
Yeah, but still, I mean, the thing is like, it's okay for the left to sit there and attack Donald Trump's kids, attack Donald Trump, attack his wife, and you get an 8-year-old girl that, you know, comes out and starts making fun of some shit that she thinks is stupid, and all of a sudden it's the end of the world. I mean, come on, there has to be some type of consistency. It can't be, it can't work this way. Like, there has to be consistency
but wait a minute,
in our society.
Wait a minute. I thought conservatives were the hateful ones and the left was the tolerant.
You know, that you just reminded me of a freaking meme that I saw on Facebook that I did a long time ago. Like, it was like right when Trump got elected. If it is exactly that right there, like it is literally like exactly that. Here, give me a second. I'm going to pull this up here real quick and read it to you because I want to read it verbatim.
Yeah,
go ahead, keep going.
No, and that's just my whole point. I mean, we hear all the time about how if you're a conservative, you're a Nazi and you're a racist and a misogynist and a Islamophobe and a xenophobe and all these other things. And then yet the left loses their goddamn minds over a little girl making fun of a junior congresswoman. You know, somebody who in the scheme of things isn't even important. It's not like she holds a high office. It's not like she's chairing some important committee. It's not like she's a presidential candidate. And even if she was, who cares? We've been making fun of politicians in this country since before its inception.
Yep, exactly. Well, I mean, it's like, I mean, political cartoons. I mean, every time somebody comes in an office, it's a fucking joke.
Right.
You know?
Political cartoons are a great example. People are always getting butthurt and offended. Oh, that one crossed the line. That one's offensive. That one's racist, whatever. No, they're political cartoons. They're designed to point stuff out in society that people don't want to talk about, that are supposed to make you uncomfortable.
Exactly. That's the point. And it's just, like, and the worst part about it though is it's a little kid. That's what they're freaking out about.
Right. Like I said, a little girl.
A little kid. Like, it's like, do you have nothing better in your life, you know, to do than to attack a fucking child?
Right. And I just don't even know what to say to that. Talking about a little girl, and sure, I mean, I'm sure her parents put her up to some of that and helped her with the scripts and whatnot. And, you know, I get that it's not 100% her. But again, who cares whether it is or isn't, whether her parents are behind it or not? She was obviously having fun with it. She enjoyed being out on the internet and making those videos.
Yep.
You're going to pick on a little girl.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. It's just, it's just horrible. That's just absolutely horrible.
Well, it's a fantastic way to discourage children from ever wanting to be involved in politics.
I know, right?
I try all the time to talk to my students about how important voting is, and they just don't care. They don't see the importance of it because in their mind, nothing's ever going to change regardless of what they do.
Well, and I think as like young people, I mean, the thing is that's kind of like, I can't say as young people because I'm not a young person anymore. But anyway, beside the point. One of the things is that Karen, hello. One of the things that I've realized is, I think that's part of the thing that, Tommy, you do know that you're in the chat, right? You can talk in the Skype call
Yes.
now, right? Okay, there you go. You don't have to type anymore. But I think one of the things that happens is that, especially with the left, like they're designing everything to push young people away from politics, especially young conservatives.
Well, and I think that's part of the plan. I mean, the left wants to keep people dumb and stupid and obedient and sheep, basically. Vote for who we tell you to vote for. I mean, and we saw that happen in the last election cycle when they shit their pants over the fact that Bernie was legitimately going to win the nomination. Had the DNC not stepped in and pushed hard for Hillary and everything else, it's entirely possible that it would have been a different election.
I think what you mean when you say pushed hard, you mean they voted her in with the super delegates and told the Democrats, sorry, you're voting on the wrong guy, so we're going to override your vote.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what happened.
Once again, we're the elites, we know best. Sit your dumb butt down and leave it up to the professionals. That's exactly their attitude in every way, shape, and form.
I 100% do not disagree with that.
All right.
So
I think Kevin's going to put the mute on.
Kevin's talking, but I can't hear him.
Yeah, he's got his mute on, so he can go down a bite.
Yes, I did. So one thing that I love about Tommy, just quickly changing the subject here, and we can quickly go back. We're on an 18+ stream, but he still like keeps his language PG. You're great, Tommy. You're great.
That's all right. That's all right. Somebody's got to be a good example.
That does piss me off, though. I mean, it's an 8-year-old kid.
Right.
Now, I mean, again, I do want to play a little devil's advocate here, though. Now, what about these kids that we've seen for the left, for the trans community, or the LGBTQ RSVP community, about these kids that come out and start saying that they identify as a different gender, or that they're cross-dressers, or of the same age, about 8 years old. So where can we this, I think this is a lot easier one than the last question that we asked the last episode, but what's the difference between an 8-year-old making fun of AOC and an 8-year-old saying, hey, I'm not a boy, I'm a girl, or I'm not a girl, I'm a boy?
I don't even know how we compare the two. I mean, one is just making fun of somebody, which is something kids do anyway. And another is a kid making a drastic, life-changing decision without all the information.
Okay, I can see that part of it, but the part that I'm talking about, though, is, so we're talking about a kid that's an 8-year-old kid that's also making fun of somebody within a situation that she probably doesn't fully understand herself, because of being 8 years old. Mind you, don't kill them. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I'm not actually...
Sure, but political commentary isn't life-changing for an 8-year-old.
So, I mean, there has to be some type of understanding of, the political climate.
I take that back, because that is going to be life-changing for that little girl. I can easily see 30 years from now, when she's out on a job hunt, getting turned down because somebody recognizes her from when she was 8, making fun of a leftist politician, and they happen to be a Democrat. I could easily see this impacting her down the road.
Okay.
Which is sad.
Yeah, this is true. I mean, like I said, guys, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate, trying to like make it like, I mean, for as much as I enjoy the echo chamber, I'm trying to present like just kind of like different ideas into the mix here.
Sure.
To trying to challenge our thought process here a little bit.
All right.
Where?
So, go ahead, Tommy.
I was just thinking that here we are. This young lady has made some funny videos. I think I saw 1 or 2 seconds of one in a video.
I've seen a couple of her videos. They're great.
We've got to have comedy. And on the right, we really believe that people ought to be left alone. If you want to make fun of somebody, you can make fun of them. If you don't like it, turn the channel. This is the secret to the way that we think. We believe everybody gets to say whatever they want. Now, not every idea presented is going to be a good idea. Some of them are going to be just absolutely horrible. But if you have a bad idea and you run into somebody that's got a much better idea, it doesn't make you bad. It just makes you've chosen a bad idea. This is socialism, and there's lots of people that want socialism for one reason or another without really thinking about the millions of people that have died because pursuing it. You know, at some point, you have to face facts. And socialism sounds so good. We're going to have the government help us out, control the means of production, and everybody's going to get a fair shake. That just sounds so good. It's so even-handed. There'll be no poverty, nobody dead. But what we do is, instead of that, it actually puts everybody in poverty. Because in the end, those that do won't. They'll leave and go somewhere where they can do and make their own, which leaves everybody else on the take line. And what we've seen in Venezuela is, lines, people eating out of dumpsters and trash trucks. This is unbelievable where socialism, takes you.
Well, and even beyond that, it makes you a slave to the government because you do become dependent on government for everything. And I don't want to be dependent on anybody for anything if I can help it. And that's the fundamental difference between the right and the left. The left believes that the government is there to take care of the citizens in every way, shape, and form. And I don't believe that's true at all.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they believe that unless, of course, like they're doing things that, they disagree with. It's very one-sided. Oh,
without a doubt. They are absolutely hypocrites. I mean, let's talk about the fights in Oregon. It's a great example between the Proud Boys and the Antifa again. They've been out there fighting each other, and now Antifa's out there beating up innocent reporters, which is just beyond silly. They've gone ultra violent. If you're here and you're on the opposite side from me, you're the enemy, period, point blank, and I don't care if you're just an innocent reporter. That they really need to be classified as a domestic terror group.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I definitely agree with that.
Yep. Just my 2 cents.
Well, I mean, that's what we're here for, right? I mean, It is an opinion-based podcast. So you want to go to Oregon?
Absolutely. I'm ready. Let's head up there. It's about time these guys meet guys that are their size.
All right, Tommy. Yeah, Tommy. There's just one thing though, man. These motherfuckers are gonna see you and they gonna shit their pants. Okay, so for those of you who've never seen Tommy's a big dude. Tommy is not somebody you want to meet in a dark alley. Like, what are you, 6'4"?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 6'4" as well.
So, time to step up and do it.
Listen, there's been some craziness out in Oregon. For those that hadn't heard, the Oregon State Legislature is going to vote on a cap and trade bill, to help fight global warming and all that.
Yeah.
And a bunch of GOP state legislators said, no, we don't want to vote on that. And they left. And so when they were talking about sending the Oregon State Police to collect these guys and bring them back to make them do their job, there was right-wing militias saying, we will violently protect these people. We will fire on the cops if they come to collect them.
Mm-hmm.
So You've got idiocy on both sides. You've got these quote-unquote militias, which are just a bunch of idiots out there running around with rifles, threatening to shoot cops for doing their job because they don't agree with the policies. And then on the left, you've got Antifa beating up everybody who is white and disagrees with them.
The one thing I want to say about that, though, so I mean, I don't. Okay, so it pains me to do it this way, but I don't want to seem like I'm condoning violence. I don't condone violence. Under any circumstances do I condone violence, but neither does this podcast, nor do any of, where any of the places where we're broadcasted. I mean, our opinions are completely segregated from Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, YouTube, Mixer. Our opinions are completely segregated. They are our own and do not reflect that of the companies that we are, platformed on. But that being said, okay, got to cover our asses. I kind of understand it. See, a lot of people are talking about, well, shit, well, now the right's, just as bad as the left is. And the thing is how many years has the right just kind of like grinned their teeth and fucking dealt with the shit? How long has the right, people that are right wing, we're not talking alt-right. We're talking normal, peace-loving Americans that like to fly a flag and have a hot dog on the 4th of July with a nice bowl of potato salad. Well, those type of Americans. They've been dealing with this shit since before 2016, since before the Trump fucking elections. Okay, it just got boiled over at that point. Now, what's happening is you have a majority group that is absolutely tired of taking a back seat to violence being absolutely okay, on the left, that nobody does shit or very little is done when it is done, that a lot of the people on the right are starting to say, you know what, fuck this.
Well, there's a difference between fighting back at a protest and picking up a gun and threatening to shoot cops for doing their job.
I completely agree. But there, okay, you and I, and I'm assuming Tommy.
What I'm saying is this isn't a reaction to the left. This is a reaction to these guys being assholes. They should not be threatening to shoot cops.
I completely agree with you. But the way that I look at it, is you have to understand, and I think you do, is that, it's a byproduct of the left. This shit wouldn't be happening if the left wasn't constantly shutting people down, beating people up, putting people in the hospital. And yes, I'm specifically talking about alt-left, Antifa, shit like that. Okay, George Soros, okay, that fucking idiot that, by the way, if you guys don't believe that George Soros has anything to do with Antifa, he was the one putting out the paid protesters. Okay, $2,000 to go out and break shit. Okay.
He absolutely is involved in it, and involved in it worldwide. In fact, he's running a couple of NGOs, and this is not just something that's happening here in America. If you've done any international news, they're still having protests. In France, the Yellow Jacket protests are gone wild. The NGOs are funding that. Yep. The NGOs are running immigrants from Africa into all the southern countries. In fact, the new president of Italy has soared in popularity when he told the captain of an NGO-sponsored boat, the Sea Witch, you cannot come into the waters with your Ethiopian immigrants. And she, the lady, it was a lady that ran that boat. She ran through and rammed some of the Coast Guard.
Yeah, she rammed a police boat or something.
Yeah. So they arrested her. They absconded with the boat. They still have many of the immigrants on the boat. The boat's going to be impounded, and the president of Italy has actually had them fine the NGO. So that they're going after Soros's real money. This is finally hitting the point that everybody has said, hey, we can't have it. It's the exact same play they're running here. Fill the country with immigrants. Go and advertise that you can come to the U.S., you can come to the south of Europe, and we'll take care of you. And these people are coming here left and right. And we're having people, they have more people. I think there's something on 5 to 7 people drowned, trying to get here, drowned or die in the desert per month.
Oh, Yeah, it's probably more than that now with the traffic we're getting. But you made a really important point. The vast, vast, vast majority of people that cross our southern border are coming for economic reasons. They are not coming because they are legitimately trying to claim political or religious asylum or something else.
That's exactly right.
Right. So,
I mean, okay.
And that's the narrative that I think we need to get out there, because the left is trying to make it sound like, no, these people are being persecuted, and if we don't let them in, they're going to die. And,
they're not. They're not under any circumstance. Take it from somebody that actually lives in Latin America. Okay. Now I know that a lot more people than other people than like in Latin America come through the states, but come through to the states. But we're talking about, you know, I think the only place that could probably rightfully say that, hey, we need some like political asylum are people from Venezuela, because we've seen how that shit's going down. Like those are the only people that I can honestly think of that might have an actual reason.
Well, even that political asylum is for people being persecuted because of their political beliefs, not just because the country's going to shit. And that's my whole point. I'm sorry your life in Central or South America sucks, but it's not our responsibility to take care of all of you. Stay there and fix your own fucking country.
This is true. You know, I mean, fight for it. You know, it's just...
I guarantee you, if I had gangs, MS-13, running around my neighborhood trying to get my kids to join up, threatening to rape my wife, breaking into my house, I have a lot of dead gangsters on my lawn. Now, I get
just drag them over the door later.
Right, and I get that that's not an option for everybody, but you know, you look at Mexico. Mexico has quite a few, and I know Kevin will back me up on this. There's quite a few towns and villages in Mexico now that have formed their own little police forces / militias with whatever weapons they could gather, stood up to these gangs, beat them up, and took their weapons from them when they came to them. You know, so they're arming themselves because the police and the military can't do the job. Some of these places are hours away from help. So they're out there protecting themselves and actively fighting back against some of these drug gangs and whatnot.
Oh, and there's a few towns that are they're probably, I would say, about 5 hours from where I'm at right now that are in that position, and you don't know how difficult that they have it, and they're standing their ground. They're fortified. Nobody comes in, nobody comes out, because what happens is that first that they arm themselves as well as they can. They get rid of the gangs, and then what happened? The federal police come in, the military comes in and tries to take the guns away from them in support of the cartels, and the cartels just come right back in after the military wipes through, and then the military doesn't touch it again. So a lot of these smaller towns have gotten smart, and they're like, no, fuck you guys. We are self-policing. You are not welcome. And you don't see much of it on the news here, because the news here is very controlled by the government, like what gets shown and what doesn't get shown. And the reason this doesn't get shown is because they don't want people in larger areas to start getting ideas about doing the same thing, because a lot of these towns are working quite well. Their kids are still going to school. They got teachers. They got people working in the town. You know, they got their own, you know, crops and things that they can live off of. You know, they're doing perfectly fine. Now, is there going to come a point where they're going to need to try to do some type of importation, exportation with the other cities and stuff like that? Yes. But that's the position that they're in right now. You know, so, and in Mexico, there's always a way around it. They don't have to go directly to the major distributors. Everybody knows somebody that for a little bit of extra cash, you know, you can get something done. So that, yeah, definitely, I can definitely back you up on that.
Absolutely. So there's plenty of places in America already where they could use a good, strong neighborhood watch. And I'm not talking about the classic neighborhood watch program where you pick up the phone and call the cops. I'm talking about, hey, you know, New York City is a great example. Oh God, who were those guys? Curtis Silva. He started they were, what were they? Guardian Angels. They wore the red berets and they patrolled the subways.
Yep.
And all that. And, you know, they were responsible for a lot of arrests. They helped, their impact on crime in the areas they patrolled was significant. You know, and these people weren't even armed. They just walked around in packs and looked out for each other and helped take care of the neighborhoods. You know, so there's things you can do without having to, you know, be armed to the teeth as well. You know, at least here in most parts of America.
Exactly. And that's just how it should be. You know, I mean, we should be able to do that. I mean, if the left had it their way, they just take everything. They take all of our weapons away from us and say, well, no. They would love to be the only ones to be able to push people around, but thankfully for how our country is, it's not like that. So yeah, what's the next topic?
Next topic. So we were talking about maybe a couple weeks ago we were talking about birth control.
Yeah.
So Colorado put out some interesting stats. They had a birth control program where they provided free birth control in the form of either an IUD or the long-term implant. And they saw a pretty significant drop, over 40%, in unwanted pregnancies in women between 15 and 29. Not only that, they figured out for every dollar they invested in the program, it saved them almost $6 in state Medicaid costs down the road.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and that wasn't even taking into consideration things like free condoms, free birth control pills, things like that. Like I said, it was just those two things that were administered through this one program. So, obviously there's some very good evidence out there for this. When we hear Democrats talking about, free birth control for women, I don't think that's unreasonable at all. And I know that a lot of the opposition on the right is from very strongly religious conservatives. But when we're talking about, not bringing unwanted children into this society, they're going to get stuck in foster homes and not be able to graduate school and end up going straight to prison anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Why not spend a few bucks on some birth control now? I mean, that
True.
seems like common sense to me.
No, exactly. No, I mean, and the thing is I think more states, more cities need to be doing kind of like checking numbers like this, like implementing programs like this, checking the numbers to show that, like, Planned Parenthood, unfortunately, Planned Parenthood's only fucking job in the world is, performing abortions. I mean, and it's a very ill-named organization, by the way. I can't say that enough. Okay. It's like Unplanned Parenthood is more like it.
Yeah.
It's like Avoid Parenthood is what it should be called. That was a conversation I was actually having with a friend earlier in the week about that, about Planned Parenthood and abortions and things like that. And, he kind of like almost like vomited when I was talking about, for example, in the state of New York, like you can have an abortion at 9 months pregnant. And if the baby comes out alive, it's considered a botched abortion. The baby's not considered a person because there's no birth certificate, because legally in New York State, there has to be a birth certificate to verify life. At which case, the doctor is open to, discussing possibilities with the parents as the baby's crying and asking for food in the next room.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. It's beyond me that killing a fully viable baby is somehow considered reproductive rights. And, during the Democratic debate, you saw Gillibrand talk about that, Christian Gillibrand, and talk about how the reproductive rights are under attack like never before, and this and that and the other. No, they aren't. These women are acting, and you see them. Great show on Hulu, Handmaid's Tale. So if you haven't seen that show yet, basically the premise is religious right overthrows the U.S. government, institutes a strict patriarchy, and the women that are able to breed are basically kept in sexual servitude and used as cattle to breed more people. Mm-hmm. And so you see these women showing up to these protests wearing these handmaid costumes. Like, that's really what's happening. Like, we're rounding up healthy breeding females and putting them into sexual slavery to breed more children. It's ridiculous how the hyperbole involved in this. Mm-hmm. Nobody's saying that you can't. I don't know. The whole situation just gets to me. It really does.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, as a parent, it has to. How can you look your kid in the eye and be okay with a 9-month abortion?
Mm-hmm. It's like, it'd be like looking at my son now. And he's almost 5. It'd be, in my opinion, it would be, like looking him in the eye and saying, you know what? I regret having you, so I'm going to throw you out the window now.
Right. And so, and that's ultimately the point. If we can stop abortions from happening in the first place by providing this birth control, Why can't we get the ultra religious conservatives on our side with that plan? They can't have it both ways. They don't want abortions, but they don't want birth control. Well, that's not the world we live in.
Yeah, no, it's like that's another issue. It's like, so you do have like, these very religious groups that, don't believe in birth control, abortion. They don't believe in anything like that. It's like, you get married, and that's when you have kids. And like sex, the only thing sex is worth is, having children. And though I disagree with that statement wholeheartedly, that's not this kind of show.
I gotta disagree. I mean, the fact is that really you're talking about the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is really the only religious organization that has come out steadfastly against birth control. None of the other major Christian religions have been in that boat, and that's something that the Catholic Church has been in. So I don't want to put the finger on them. They've got plenty of problems in the Catholic Church. And I actually went to a mass 2 weeks ago with friends. So it's not that I don't like the Catholics. I think they're wonderful people. I'm just a Protestant. So that's a change. But Protestants do believe in birth control. We believe in abstinence.
By and large, I've also seen Baptist preachers say that it's a sin to use birth control. So you're right. Although there's not maybe a whole nother major branch of religion, there's certainly individual churches out there preaching against it.
Yeah, but it's not the policy. But the real policy is abstinence. It should be realized that sex creates a spiritual connection between a man and a woman, one that should not be taken lightly. And the liberals have made a living off of saying sex is just sex. Women can act any way they want. And it has absolutely darkened the souls of many women to become what men want to become, easy.
So
it's
two points. 2 points to back you up on that. One, Teen Vogue a while back. I remember there was a controversy. Teen Vogue now aimed at teenage girls. The cover story was about anal sex. Now, why in the world would you have a cover story about anal sex in a magazine marketed to teenage girls who are not at the age of consent yet? That just is beyond me. Right? See, so that kind of thing is a big part of the problem right there. God, and I can't even remember my second point now, but you're right. Women are being sold to men. Oh, and the other point, and we've talked about this before, it's a lack of a two-parent home. Kids used to be educated about this stuff in the home, and now they're not hearing about it. They're hearing about this stuff from their friends.
This is not a color thing. That's just a class issue, and it's really sad.
No, that's what I'm saying. I just any two-parent home, it's gone by the wayside in America, regardless of your color, and almost regardless of class, because now we're seeing women that are upwardly mobile enough and doing well enough for themselves that they can afford to be single mothers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even a class thing. It's become a social problem here in America.
Yeah, no, I've got no solution for this other than hoping that people will do right by their family
and that's
support their.
Yeah, that's really all there is to it. And the other thing is the government. This is an area where the government does have a role to play, and that is to encourage marriage. And they do that by tax breaks and things like that.
Marriage and children.
Yeah,
that's really the most important part right there. It's what it's all about.
Absolutely. Now, some good news is we are seeing marriage rates go up with millennials. They were going down for the last couple of generations, but millennials are starting to see an uptick in marriage. So we'll see. Hopefully that translates into longer lasting marriages as well. I know my wife and I just celebrated 23 years the other night. We went out and had a great dinner and got a hotel for the night, spent some time together and had a great time. And, a lot of people say, I've heard people say this, I don't want to be with somebody that long. I got to argue the opposite. It's really nice to be with somebody that long and to still love and appreciate them and still be excited about being in bed with them and all those things.
Yep. I've been with my wife now since I met her on February the 7th, 1995. And man, wouldn't trade a day without her.
95?
95.
Yep.
I don't even think I remember anything from 95.
Yeah, see, so I got married in 96, so we've been married about the same amount of time there, Tommy.
Well, I tell you, it's such an enjoyment to find somebody that's just the right person, and it's such a travesty to end up in a relationship that ends. And I've been through both, and so Karen, we're going to pray for you so that you can get through this whole thing.
Yeah, I also went through a divorce previous to meeting my wife that I have now, and that was just a case of me being young and stupid and getting married at 19 when I wasn't ready, and she didn't want to be married again either. So that was a mistake on both our parts.
Why would you do that at 19 though? Like
We're from an age when that was expected, son.
And just being
he calls me son.
just being young and dumb. I was not in love, and I thought I was.
I guess that makes sense.
That happens to us sometimes. So,
but one thing I actually wanted to bring up though about the abortion and birth control thing, isn't like a thing going on right now? Aren't a lot of states illegalizing abortion except for like the 1% rule of incest and rape?
Yeah, conservative legislatures around the country are putting some pretty big strictures on abortion. And this is where the women are saying that their rights are under attack. Because there are a few states now where they have no abortion clinics, or they only have one, which can be a hardship for a woman, especially if she's poor. I mean, she may not have, hundreds of dollars to travel to a clinic and stay the night and all that kind of stuff. So I get that.
Yeah.
In any case, so effectively what they're trying to do is to restrict it so much that it's going to force a challenge to Roe versus Wade, because they're hoping with the current makeup that they can overturn Roe versus Wade, especially if Trump manages to appoint another Supreme Court justice. They'll have a big enough majority then they think they might be able to get it overturned altogether. So they're doing the best they can to make that happen.
I'm absolutely for restricting abortion. We've killed too many babies, and if it's tough on a woman, and women know that it's a difficult task, don't find your way into a bed with somebody you're not planning to have kids with. There's too many solutions out there. There's birth control of every shape and size. Okay,
so other than obvious cases of rape where a woman doesn't have a choice in the matter, I can agree with that. I had that same discussion with my kids, both my boys, when they were of age to have that whole talk, and I told them both the same thing. Basically, my dad told me, do not get in bed with a woman unless you're willing to chance knocking her up. And I don't care how old you are or where you're at in your life. If you're not willing to take responsibility, you got a problem.
The one thing I wanted to say real quick, because I've actually been asked this quite a bit. So we always use the reference of Roe versus Wade, and getting that taken out. But a lot of people don't know what Roe versus Wade is, which is funny, by the way. So Roe versus Wade 410 U.S. 113 was a landmark decision of the U.S. Supreme Court in which the court ruled that the due process clause of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution provides a right to privacy that protects a pregnant woman's liberty to choose whether or not to have an abortion. And it was decided in 1973.
Right. So basically what that decision did was it legalized abortion.
Basically.
And then different states went about putting different restrictions on it and different requirements and so forth. And it was that way for a long time. And like I said, now we've got these pretty conservative state legislatures that are working to restrict it as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, definitely. So it's definitely one of those things that this podcast isn't about history lessons, by the way, but I just wanted to say that because I've been asked that question quite a bit, like what is Roe versus Wade?
No, it's always good to provide education and background, because I think you're right. A lot of people don't understand. Let's change subjects. A great example, Colin Kaepernick and the flag. I don't know if you heard about this. So Nike,
nope.
Okay, so Nike put out a new pair of shoes with the Betsy Ross American flag on the heel.
Yes.
All right. So Kaepernick said that he was offended and they pulled the shoes. Now, Nike had already designed the shoes, marketed the shoes, produced the shoes, and now they're pulling them because one guy and his buddies decided they're upset. And he's talking about how the flag is racist and this and that and the other. That exact same flag was hung behind Obama during his inauguration. You know, see, so it just goes to show you what he knows and what he understands. But who the hell cares? Who cares about Colin Kaepernick anyway? He doesn't even play football anymore. Who cares?
Didn't he get fired?
No, he just never got hired by another team, and the NFL paid him off to make him go away.
He was the guy that started the whole kneeling thing, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah, and the NFL settlement.
That shit pissed me off.
Yeah, he's never going to have to work again the whole rest of his life.
That shit fucking pissed me off. He should be in a fucking ditch somewhere.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
Who gives a shit what you think about the shoes, Colin Kaepernick? If you don't like them, don't buy them. I don't like them. I wouldn't buy them, and it's got nothing to do with the flag. I just think they're ugly as fuck.
Yeah.
Never mind the fact that I don't want to buy Nike anyway. Nike, besides being wish-washy politically, we know that they make their stuff in sweatshops anyway, so.
Yep.
There you go.
I mean, I'd like to say that, like, I don't fall into it. I buy Converse, but unfortunately Converse is owned by Nike, so I'm kind of fucked either way. But I just really like Converse. So, yeah, that was one thing that I wanted to talk about was, you know, the Ross flag being like the left just picked it up and ran with it. Like, it wasn't just him. Like, he mentioned it. He mentioned it, and then the left just picked up and fucking ran. It's like any...
And Tommy's talked about this before. That's because leftist culture is the culture of outrage. That's what they do. They run from one outrageous crisis to the next so that they have a reason to stay perpetually mad so they can continue to point their fingers. Oh, look at the evil racist Nazis. We have to get rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the leftists become.
No, well, the Confederate flag, that's racist. The Ross flag, that's racist. The next one on the line is our current flag.
Oh, no, absolutely. I've seen Antifa and other leftists several times now in the news and things like that they've talked about how the American flag is a fascist symbol. All right. There was a story, 4 or 5 months back, maybe a little bit longer. A guy showed up to protest, and he was actually on the side of the leftists. He wasn't Antifa, though, and he had an American flag, and a bunch of Antifa members came over and demanded he give up the flag, and when he refused, they beat him up and took the flag from him and stomped on it and all that. Now, he was there in support of them, and they beat him up, so the left is eating their own. Mm-hmm. You know, if you don't conform exactly to what we say, you have to be a Nazi.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. No, these guys are fucking ridiculous, and I always like watching those videos on YouTube of like people that have actually caught confrontations with Antifa against like Proud Boys or even Marines. Like, forget this, the Proud Boys, like Marines. Like, generally speaking, the Marines are the hotheads. Like, I've seen a couple of Army guys go off, but the Marines really fucking
and there's another great example. Some Marines got beat up, I think it was in Washington, during one of those protests by some Antifa members who were hurling racial insults at them. So again, remember, the left is supposed to be tolerant. And when they told them, look, we're not Proud Boys, we're U.S. Marines, and the one guy was Hispanic, I guess they started calling him all kinds of racial slurs for Hispanics, and they beat up, some guys that were just there minding their own business. They weren't even part of the protest.
Mm-hmm.
So again, the tolerant left beats up heroes and calls them racial slurs.
Oh yeah, that shit pisses me off. Like, so, I've said this before, I've never served, but I would, like, if the draft was like set up again tomorrow, like, I'd be like, all right, let's go. Like, where are you sending me? It's just, I love my country. I love my country, and I love the people that, like you, James, that have willingly signed that contract knowing the potential of what could happen, that you might not come home. Regardless of whether or not you say you sat on the sidelines and you were waiting most of the time, you still signed that contract knowing what that contract entails.
No, that's just a joke that we have in the military. You spend all your time hurrying up and waiting. You know, they tell you to hurry up and get one place, and then you sit around and wait forever. You know, and the military, you know, the other thing, and I was only in combat for a few days, but it was punctuated by long periods of boredom, wondering what the hell was going on, followed by several intense minutes of just absolute terror.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's not like in the movies where you're in combat just constantly. But anyway, my whole point was, yeah, we spent a lot of time just hurrying up and waiting.
Hurrying up and waiting. Okay.
And everybody can stand in line and wait. You do it at Walmart every day, so it's not that big of a deal.
Well, either way, again, I've said this is the third time I've said this to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate
it. So, all right, next one. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, aka the
communistas, I call them.
Communistas. All right, let's all right.
So the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, for those that don't know, is a circuit court based out in the western half of the country. It encompasses California, Hawaii, Oregon, Washington, basically all the really super liberal western states. And it didn't used to have that big of an impact on national politics, but as the populations in those states have changed drastically and increased so much, now they have this huge outsized impact on national politics, and they have been in direct opposition to everything Trump's tried to do since he came into office. So the latest two things they've done here, one, they blocked Trump from using $2.5 billion in Pentagon funding that is specifically set aside for counter-drug operations. I would argue building a wall is part of the counter-drug operation, securing the border, which is what the Trump administration did. But, of course, some idiots sued him, and right now the Ninth Circuit Court has said, no, you can't do that. So that's been shut down. All right, so they don't want to fix anything, and now they're saying there's a crisis because it's making Trump look bad, you know. Before that, remember, they spent months saying that it's a manufactured crisis?
Yeah.
I know Tommy heard that, too. They said it over and over.
Oh, yeah.
It's a manufactured crisis. He's making it up. There's nothing wrong. Now they're saying, yes, there's a crisis at the border. Look at these poor immigrants. They're stuffed in the cages like animals, and they're being beaten and abused. You know, again, you can't have it both ways. There's either a crisis or there isn't. If there is, let's fix it. All right, but they don't want to do that.
Exactly.
But the other thing, let's see here. What was the other one? Oh, the same court also, by the way, and this is completely off topic, there was also a ruling that bikini baristas in Seattle have to cover up now.
What?
Yeah. So, sure, it's a little tacky and sleazy, but you know what? If somebody wants to go and get their coffee from a woman in a bikini, more power to them. As long as they're not providing sexual services, who cares?
Truth.
So
it's like this thing that there's like so in the gaming sphere, I mean, considering that our primary live stream is on a gaming service website, one of the things that happened over at E3, where they announce all the new video games and consoles and shit.
Yeah, it's a big industry show.
Yeah, there was a streamer, I believe from Twitch. I forget. I can't even remember what her name is, but she did a quick video and uploaded it to Twitter about these girls that were wearing like short shorts and like crop tops and were dancing on a stage for an energy drink. They were promoting an energy drink and calling it, oppressive to women, that, it was objectifying, and that it needs to be stopped. And I every time I see one of these, it's like it happened with the Miss Universe pageant. They got rid of the bikini competition. The Formula One girls, they got rid of them. And every time this happens, okay, let's be logical here. So you're leftist and you're feminist. So being feminist, you believe that women should have equal rights to do whatever it is that they want to do with their bodies and their selves, right?
And that's a key point. None of those women were forced.
Exactly. None of these women have a gun pointed at their head to make them do this. They are willingly saying, hey, I got the looks, I got the, the energy, let's do this. And you're going to pay me to dance around and look good? Yeah, okay, fine, let's do it. It's like, I'm just waiting for the next issue of sports, like the Sports Illustrated swimsuit, to be fucking women in hijabs. That's what I'm waiting for. You know,
we're not too far from that. We really aren't, because we already, seriously, when you look at Rashid Tlaib and Ilhan Omar sitting in Congress and defending Islam as liberating for women,
fuck, I mean, that.
Right? How much crack are those women smoking? I mean, seriously. For them to say that Islam is liberating for women and to defend it and call anybody who disagrees an Islamophobe, that is just outrageous.
Honestly, anyone that sits there and says that a hijab or anything Islamic is like liberating to women is higher than Keith Richards in his prime.
Right.
Okay.
And we've talked about that. You know, if ever at any point the pastor of my church told my wife or the other women in the church, you have to dress a certain way, I'd be like, okay, we're out of here, buddy. Sorry.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
You know,
I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, over in Islamic countries, it's like the predominant ones that we know of, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, and even I think Saudi Arabia, women are not allowed to choose who they marry. They're not allowed to have an education. They're not allowed to vote. They're not allowed to have a job. You know, and it's like that's liberation.
Basically, they're not allowed to do anything without their male guardian giving them permission to do so or being in their company.
Exactly. And if they're caught, even perceived to be looking at somebody else, if they walk by a guy on the street and that guy goes to her husband and says, "Hey, your wife looked at me," the husband can kill her legally.
Okay, so I told this story on another podcast, but I'll tell it again real quick. While we were in Saudi Arabia, after Desert Storm was over, we were in a gold market, and a woman in the full, the whole deal, all we could see was this little slit here of her eyes. She was all covered.
Yep.
She stood on the corner and was staring at us, I guess, again, because she'd never seen Americans. I was just staring at us, and one of the religious police took offense to that, walked up behind her with this big old staff and just cocked her right on the head and knocked her ass out, left her laying there in the street. And people were walking by and spitting at her and cursing at her and everything else. So we left before they decided to stone her to death or something. And the only thing she did was she looked at somebody who wasn't a male member of her family.
Absolutely ridiculous. But hey, it's liberating for women.
And it's the religion of peace.
It's a religion of peace. Right. We all should convert right now. We should all become Islamic right now. I'm going to grow out a big old fucking Osama bin Laden fucking burger beard, okay? And I'm going to get the turban, okay? I'm going to become an official towel head, all right? That's what I'm going to do, all right? I'm going to...
That particular term is pretty racist there.
No, okay, but I'm referring specifically to Islam. It's like, okay, you want to say it's racist? It's not racist. It's a religion. It can't be racist. It's Islamophobic. It's Islamophobic. I'm not Islamophobic. I'm not afraid of Islam. I want to completely wipe it off the fucking planet. That's what I want to do. Okay? I'm not afraid of it. It doesn't scare me. Okay? A phobia is something you're afraid of. I fucking hate it. Sorry. Rant over.
All right.
Let me fall back for a second and talk about the 9th, because you hit on a subject that I think, and I put a tweet from Donald Trump in the chat. I don't know if you saw that link. There is a real serious movement on the part of the executive to take back power from the judiciary.
Oh, without a doubt.
There has been way, way, way too many little judges, some podunk, justice of the peace down in Tupelo, Mississippi, putting a national restraint on the President of the United States. And that really can't be allowed to take place. And Donald Trump tweeted out after the Supreme Court decisions saying, hey, we don't really have enough information to justify putting this back on, essentially stopping Trump. And Trump then tweeted, guess what? That's fake news. That's coming. That's fake news. Since that question's going on the census, I'm in charge and it's going to happen. Well,
he's talking about doing it by executive order.
Yeah, done. And there's not going to be any stopping it. And the bottom line is, the Justice Department immediately had big meetings immediately, because the president just said, guess what, game over. I'll go nuclear, and then we'll fight it out. And it won't be in the courts, because the guys that I control have the guns.
Okay, so let's expand on that just a little bit, because that's an interesting point. You know, Trump's done a lot by executive order here lately. And Kamala Harris, who's got a real shot at winning the presidency, has threatened to use executive action to implement different forms of gun control. Right? So, I mean, now, and we can talk about what ifs and, you know, guys like me violently resisting and things like that. But you see what I'm saying here? This whole thing about executive action is it's starting to be. I'm afraid it's going to become a political weapon, in other words, and it's going to get used for the wrong reasons by different presidents.
Well, that's why we have the Second Amendment.
It already is, but I think the real question is it's not that. The real question here is, when is it that the courts are going to pull back their claws? They've essentially made themselves the judge and jury for anything that they do or do not like.
Right, activist judges is what you're talking about now. People who are making decisions based on political reasons instead of interpretation of the law.
That's right, and there are and the interpretation that they like, whether it's the law or not the law. Right. And I think that it's about time that the executives say, you don't get to tell us what to do. If it's not unconstitutional, you don't get to say what is and what isn't.
Well, and that's just it. Trump is fighting, him and his administration. They're fighting back hard against a lot of these judges.
Yeah, and they're putting conservative judges, and they're telling at one time, it used to be there was essentially a courtesy extended to the senator of a state that they could veto a judge that was being nominated for the court. For whatever reason, it didn't matter. I just don't like the color of his skin. I don't like the color of his hair. He came into my office and had halitosis. It doesn't matter. And they use that to knock conservatives out of the hunt in liberal states. That's why the ninth has always been so liberal. Trump is like, nah, we're not playing that. If I get them in, they're in. So he has been putting judges in left, right. And this is going to rebalance the courts before it's done. And if he gets
there's still hundreds of openings he needs to post for. That's one thing. And you're right. It will rebalance the courts and reshape our country in a good way. And we definitely need that.
In the way that, well, the reality of it is there's guys right now I think need to be tossed. Roberts, that guy is no good, and he needs to be tossed. My he's the guy that's directly responsible for Obamacare. He was the one that voted against Trump on the census deal, not because he had a good argument, because he's just got a little thing about Trump. Trump's called him out, and I think maybe the guy was blackmailed into voting the way he did. Something changed him, and either he was a liberal in hiding for all these years, or somebody's got something on him.
Well, we need to be really careful. We need to be really careful about talking about removing Supreme Court justices, though, because it's how people overthrow governments. So we need to be really careful about that. No question.
Look, the point that I've been saving, it goes back to like what you were initially talking about this one candidate talking about using executive orders to implement gun policy or gun control. If that starts to get taken to the extreme, out of hand, and there's a Congress and a Supreme Court that supports it, that type of action, that is exactly why the Second Amendment exists. And I only see it going one of two ways if something like that goes down. There's only one or two ways it's going to go down. People actually double over and say, here you go, take my weapons away from me because I'm a law-abiding citizen. Or people say, no, fuck you, and we're back into another civil war. Those are the only two directions I see it going.
Well, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but you look at the size of the United States of America, and granted, most of the population is concentrated in large metropolitan areas. But there's no way that the government has enough troops to control all that. Local police, a lot of them are not going to want to enforce those orders to go out and seize weapons. It just isn't going to work. They're never going to be able to control the countrysides. They're never going to be able to control all the small towns and whatnot that are dotted all across this country, where people are going to stash weapons and hide out and violently resist. And I don't care what the reason is. I would violently resist.
I would too. I'm not going to lie. I would too. Somebody came knocking on my door saying, we're here to confiscate registered weapon, da-da-da-da. Okay. When I'm dead, you can pry it out of my fingers.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I live in a state where we don't have registrations. We don't have to. It's not required. And that's exactly why we're not supposed to have it in this country. They talk about universal gun registration as a way to control gun crime and gun violence. Again, criminals don't register their weapons anyway. All you're doing is creating a registry of law-abiding people, which is exactly one of the things the Constitution was designed to protect against. The government should never have a list of law-abiding people that they can just go around to your house and say, well, we know you own this because of this list, regardless of what we're talking about.
Yep.
It's beyond silly, and it's terrifying to me that that's the direction that people want to go.
I completely agree. Completely agree. All right, so let's go to the next one. Colin fucking Kaepernick.
Yeah, we talked about Colin Kaepernick already.
Loser and traitor. But I like what you wrote, though.
well, just going back to him, he pisses me off because, like I mentioned in the notes there, he grew up in a white household. I mean, he wasn't disadvantaged or anything, and he's acting like he's this great victim who's been suffering for the black race or something. And that's not it at all. The guy doesn't have a job at the NFL because he was protesting at work. Now, I don't care what your job is. It is not okay for you to protest at work. It's just not. If I started taking political protests of mine into the classroom, I'd be fired.
But what happened with all the other football players that were taking knees with him?
Well, and that's just it. They stuck with it, and I think the NFL absolutely decided that this guy was too much trouble and they didn't want him around, which is why they paid him off so that he would leave. They settled with him. And he's never going to have to work again. He's rich for the rest of his life for doing nothing but being, in my opinion, being an asshole. Now, he's got a right as an American to do that. And I'm not going to say that he can't. I'm going to say that, again, he shouldn't at work. That's not the time and place for that. Save that for your interviews after the game, or before the game, or when you're doing your pressers before the Super Bowl, or you're out speaking to the community or whatever. That's where you talk about your political stuff.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, and I am a little bit fed up with actors, musicians, and sports stars using their positions and influence to sway people in their direction. Like, make it trendy, make it cool, and get the young people.
Again, I don't even have a problem with that. They have a right to free speech. I have a problem with them conflating the two. If you're a football player, get out there and football. Entertain me first. That's your damn job. And if I want to hear your political commentary, I'll tune into your webpage or your podcast or your interview with Fox Sports or whatever. It's no different with the actors and everything else. I want to see your movies. I want to see your shows. I don't want to hear you tell me how much you hate Trump, because I don't care what you think about politics. I'm watching you because you're funny or because you're a great actress or whatever.
Yeah, the only time that I would really want to hear somebody's political opinion while being entertained at the same time is watching a stand-up.
Right. That's exactly the venue that comedy is designed for. And that's why I'm so distressed about this little girl who's being chased off by the leftists. Comedy should be sacred in the way that religion is sacred. You should be able to make fun of and poke fun at anything. George Carlin understood that. And he did a lot of really great routines about that, about freedom of speech.
Well, I mean, he was a leftist.
He was, absolutely. But he understood that everybody has a right to say what they want to say.
I don't think he'd be a leftist now. Honestly, with the way the left is going, I don't think he would. I don't think he's like a socialist leftist the way a lot of these people are now. No, not at all. Not at all.
And honestly, I think George Carlin was more of a libertarian. Do your own thing and leave me the fuck alone.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, I mean, George Carlin went after everybody.
Absolutely.
You know, another good one that I liked that, you know, got kind of like ran off, but it was his own damn fault, was Carlos Mencia. I liked him because he was fucking racist, but racist against everyone, including himself.
Right. And again, comedy, I think, should be sacred, right up there with religious speech.
I completely agree. I mean, comedy is like, it's that one thing that, like, when shit starts to get really stressful, when shit starts to get really, you know, dicey in the political climate, in, you know, the social climate, that the comedy is, it can make you laugh at shit that, you know, you would normally be uptight about.
Yeah, listen, over the years, I have made some horrible jokes about my dead brother. And the fact that he died of leukemia, horrible cancer jokes that were really, really inappropriate. But at that point in time, they were funny to me. They were funny to other people around me, even if most of the people around me didn't appreciate it. You know, like my parents obviously had a huge problem with it. My sister kind of chuckled. And it's because we understood that my brother would have loved those jokes. So it was healing for us, you know?
Mm-hmm. And that's actually a really good point that you just made, because the thing is this is the problem with the left right now, and a lot of people, is that they don't want you to make those jokes because it could be offensive to somebody else that might be suffering from cancer, or somebody that might have a family member that's suffering from cancer, but they completely ignore the fact that it's something that you openly accepted as being healing, knowing that your brother would find it funny regardless of his situation.
Right. Exactly.
You know, so you have to give up something that makes you feel better because somebody else is offended. And I've always said that if you're offended, get the fuck out. It's not my problem that you're fucking offended. You don't have to watch this. You don't have to listen to me. This is not, I'm here to protect your fucking feelings. I don't give a shit about your feelings.
So again, this comes back to the left says you have to conform, you have to believe what we believe, you have to act like we act, or you can't be tolerated. But at the same time, they're trying to make it sound like they're free and open and inclusive and tolerant. And they're just not. They're tolerant of things that they agree with, and that's it.
One thing I wanted to bring up really quick. I was listening to Reuters this morning, and I can't remember the details. I was going to look it up because it was something I want to talk about. Somebody left the GOP and went independent.
Justin Amash.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Tell us about it, Tommy.
Justin Amash is a libertarian who ran as a Republican in Michigan and has been a pretty good libertarian, but after his family has some ties to imports through China, and the actions by Trump has hit his family pretty hard. They're losing money, and he came out to see if he could create a wave to get Trump impeached after the Mueller report. The Mueller report, which completely exonerated Trump, completely. There's no collusion. There was no obstruction. It was just a bunch. We
had this talk already.
Well, I mean, you could agree with it or not, but that's exactly what happened. He might have said that, but he said, "Hey, we got to fire Mueller." He said that may be true, and it may not. Don McGahn said didn't happen.
Hey, Tommy,
that was his words taken out of that. So,
Tommy, there we go. Okay, we lost the string for a minute.
So even if he did say that, even if he said, "Hey, we ought to fire Don McGahn," saying it and doing it are two different things.
I got you.
It's only obstruction when it's done.
I understand.
You got to take an action, and it's only obstruction if it's an action and it creates it's trying to cover a crime that with criminal intent. So you have to have. There's two phases to obstruction. Not only can you can go and do things in the accordance of your job, and it's not obstruction.
Okay,
you have to obstruct.
Can we agree that there was an attempt at what everybody perceives to be obstruction?
Oh, no, obstruction.
Come on now.
Obstruction has a legal definition. Unless it passes both components, then it's not obstruction, and that's why Mueller didn't bring it. If Mueller thought for a second he'd get rid of Trump.
Can we agree that Trump was trying to get in the way of the investigation? How about that?
I'd agree that he was upset about he was very pissed about it. But that's not obstruction.
he was
If I
trying
accuse
to
you-
get in the way of the investigation.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. In fact, what he said was he told Comey prior, and here's two facts that refute that very thing. Number one, he told me, are you investigating me? Comey said, no, we're not investigating you. He said, well, if there are satellites in my employ, I would like to know who they are if they're dealing with Russia. That's what he said. That's not obstruction. That's exactly the opposite of obstruction, number one. Number two, he also made no action, took no action, saying, I'm not happy about it. Hey, if I say, look, my man James is over there screwing young boys behind his wife's back. How are you feeling about that right now? You're not too happy about it. And you might say, screw you, asshole. And you would be right to do it, but it's not obstruction unless you had actually done it and you were trying to cover up criminal activity. Those two things must be present for the law to be broken. And since the law, he didn't do either, he did tweet about it. He did say it was a witch hunt. He told, even if he said to Don McGahn, which has been disputed by both McGahn and Trump, if he said, hey, we need to fire this guy, so what? He didn't fire the guy.
And one more time, and I said this last time we had this discussion, I agree that the president has the right to fire whoever the hell he wants.
That's
so,
right.
Yes, he could fire the special prosecutor and be perfectly within his legal rights to do so. I still say that asking your lawyer to fire him is Trump trying to get in way of the investigation.
You guys keep going. I gotta go get a beer real quick.
I think really your argument would be better positioned if you said Trump's action by tweeting about the investigation has a far more deleterious impact and pollutes the judiciary. So one of the things that a judge would say is, hey, everybody's got opinions on it because everybody knows. But the fact is the OIC, the Office of Legal Counsel, OLC, has already said you can't bring a president up on charges, period, in a statement. So this whole thing was all about trying to get Trump impeached from day one. And there's been error after baloney in that report. And by the 18th, we'll start seeing this whole thing come tumbling apart after Mueller goes on this thing. So even if he did it, it's not illegal unless he obstructed while covering up for an illicit act, and that's not the case. And that's why the Justice Department, even the guys that don't like him, and Rod Rosenstein is not his friend, wanted to see Trump gone. They couldn't do it. And
right.
So I'm glad that that's the case, and I really like what Trump's done. I wasn't a supporter, but at this point, I don't want these snake bastards running the country and running anybody out that we put in there. That's got to stop. Yeah. And they're using every crooked way under the sun to do it, and that's got to be stopped. And for those people that did that crossed the line,
listen,
there's got to be legal consequences.
I'm with you on this whole thing, and I agree that this was all based on bullshit. We all know it was based on a phony dossier. We know there was FISA court abuses and all that. I agree with you on all that. I'm largely on your side in all this. My whole point is, though, I don't think Trump was 100% innocent. To say that the report completely absolved him, I think he was. The whole Russia thing, I think, is bullshit. But he was absolutely trying to get in the way of this investigation a couple of times.
But
we still on this?
But he didn't, and that's the thing. Wanting to see it ended is not obstruction.
No, but he tried.
Even if he would have fired Don, if he'd have said Don firing, period, that's it, see him go. The reality is a special counsel would have been replaced.
Oh yeah,
it would have been replaced by somebody else because the special counsel was started, and it will not be ended by the president. It just means he would fire Mueller or whatever. Right. It'd be replaced by somebody else. So the reality of it is there was no getting through it, and he had to do what he had to do. But I'm glad to see it kind of come to an end. And at the end, when they couldn't prove anything, In fact, the Mueller report, which I have read, 99% of it, I've scanned a few pages because it was boring as hell. It's really just an op-ed. You know, Trump's son met with Russians. Well, you know, why didn't they mention the fact that the Russians met with Fusion GPS before and after that meeting?
Right. Well,
why wasn't that mentioned?
And the fact that they're continuing this by requesting tax returns and everything else, they're just fishing now, looking for more.
That's exactly what it is. And the thing about it is, they want to turn the power of the government on an innocent person. There's no crime.
But another thing that pissed me off about that was Mueller himself. That whole bullshit, like his whole public, I know I've said this before, but I'll say it again. That whole fucking public statement was his only purpose of doing that was to rile people up. That was the only because they were starting to see that people were starting to fucking die down. Like, well, fuck, you know, the Mueller report doesn't prove anything. Okay, there is no indefinite, you know, markers here of collusion or obstruction. At least nothing that like can be used against him for impeachment. You know, there's no proof of illegal activity. So, you know, again, assumption of innocence, and people were starting to. CNN reported it. Fox News reported it. Trump innocent, right? Or Trump not found guilty through Mueller report. Shit like that. The only reason why Mueller came out and did that public statement, which I heard several different news outlets say was not normal for a situation like that. It's normally when like a special report comes out like that, the report comes out, that's it. You know, you don't hear from the special investigator. So he comes out and riles people up again, say, yes, there was this and yes, there was that, because within his context. That's all that was. Just to keep stoking the flames, because they began to realize that shit was going down.
Yeah, and he wanted Congress to take that and run with it and try to impeach him based on whatever he laid out. But again, and we talked about this before when we talked specifically about impeachment, even if they manage to find some bullshit and impeach him, he's still going to be president. He's still going to be in office. Nothing's going to change day to day. The only thing that's going to be different is that, you know, he's going to be embarrassed.
Yep.
I mean, so who cares? It's not accomplishing what the left wants, which is to get Trump out of office. So
well,
why
I think
bother?
the thing is I think the American people, a lot of them don't have a full understanding of what impeachment entails.
Right, and we talked about that last time. They don't. A lot of Americans think that impeachment means he's out of office, or that he's out of office and Hillary wins, and it's a do-over.
Sorry. It's not. Yeah, not going to happen.
Yeah, it's neither one of those things, obviously. So, again, this goes back to our piss-poor educational system, and this goes back to kids not giving a shit because they're growing up in these broken homes, and I'm telling you, everything comes back to the destruction of the nuclear family in this country.
I agree with that statement.
I honestly think because it provides stability for growth and education and community and giving a shit about your neighbors and all those other things.
Yep.
You know, kids used to grow up at least a little bit interested in politics and what was going on. Kids today aren't. All they know is they hate Trump. And they hate Trump
without knowing why.
Right. They don't understand. All they hear is Nazi and Trump. Oh, that's bad.
Oh yeah, no, and I always love that. Like when you ask a leftist, like, well, what about what Trump don't you like? And they always say, well, his policies. All right, well, what policy don't you like? Well, he's a racist. That's not a policy.
Right.
That's your opinion. What do you have that proves he's racist? Oh, well, all the things he said about the Mexicans. What things did he say about the Mexicans that were racist? He didn't say anything about them that was racist. He didn't call them beaners. He didn't call them like tortilla chuckers.
Even
if
you take everything he has said that people have said was racist, and we say, okay, yeah, he said some racist shit. It hasn't changed his policies. You know,
nope.
Lowest black unemployment, lowest female unemployment, all those other things that we've talked about in the past. So who cares if he's racist if he's getting the job done and making life better for everybody?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. The thing about it is, everybody uses racist as a bludgeon to say, this justifies me hating him. And,
That's
you know,
exactly it.
Charlottesville, but Charlottesville was nothing. He never said anything. It was always been used by the press to misstate what was actually said. Anybody that goes back and read what was actually said, he said without equivocation, I'm not talking about people that are racist. Not talking about the K. He's talking about the people that were on both sides of the statue issue.
But again, who cares if he was? Who cares if he was praising of neo-Nazis? If his policies are good for everybody in this country, and he's not got police out rounding up people of color and things like that, then who cares what he thinks or says, as long as he's doing his job correctly for the betterment of all Americans.
Exactly. It's exactly.
And even if he is racist, again, how many presidents have we had that have been openly racist?
Too many.
There's been at least a dozen that I know of that I've learned about over the years.
God, Wilson, Johnson, these guys were there. And by the way, they're all Democrats.
Yeah, we're talking
they're
about
all Democrats.
Yeah, we're talking about presidents who promoted eugenics and things like that, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If an American president today came out and promoted eugenics, the world would collectively shit their brains. But I mean, it used to be something that a lot of the world believed in. So
exactly.
Anyway, moving on. Let's see here. Fired cops. So before I say,
say it how you wrote it.
Yeah, before I say anything, I love cops. I love cops. My brother was a cop before he passed. I've had neighbors that were cops. Wanted to be a cop at one point in my life. Love cops. Cops are no different than anybody else. There's good and bad in every population. All right, so love cops. But these are coward cops. I'm so glad they're gone. So Governor DeSantis of Florida, he fired Sheriff Scott Israel several months ago. He was the sheriff in Broward County where Parkland school shooting happened.
Mm-hmm.
Fired him. Scumbag.
Yep, fired him. Fired, I think, 4 of the deputies that responded that day, including the one they called the Broward coward, who was caught on video just standing outside the door. And then also there were a couple of cops fired in Las Vegas who froze during the shooting here and didn't respond to the shooting when that guy killed 58 people. So I just thought that this was really good that they weren't standing up and trying to protect these cops, that they were actually getting them off the street, because if you're going to freeze under fire, you're a danger to everybody.
Yep.
Danger to your partner, you're a danger to the civilians you're trying to protect, you're a danger to yourself. Some people are just not cut out for it. You know, if you're going to freeze, if you're a flat out coward, whatever the case may be, you do not need to be wearing a uniform.
Agreed.
And I can say that having taken fire. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I've never taken fire, but I completely agree. Yeah, so yeah, it's just. I mean, I knew about the one from Parkland. I saw the video of him, just like the shots were going off. He was at the back door, hiding, like. Right, cugged right up against the cement wall.
Right.
His gun was still in the holster. He didn't even have his fucking gun out. Just kind of trying to peek around and look into the door. And I was like, are you fucking serious? And it took him that long to get rid of him. Like, it wasn't like an immediate thing. Like, dude, you fucked up. You done dropped the ball. Bye. Like, I think he was suspended with pay for like 6 months.
Initially, yeah. And the Sheriff Israel got fired. He's still fighting to get his job back. Now, just like the president has the right to fire anybody.
That's ridiculous.
The governor can fire anybody at the state level he wants, and that includes sheriffs, and he did. And now this guy is still fighting to get his job back. And it is ridiculous. He obviously was incompetent. It was partially the policies of his office that let this happen in the first place. And when you're talking about a mass shooting, you know, most mass shootings are over in 3 to 4 minutes. So literally every second counts. If those cops are not running in there the second they get on campus, kids are dying.
Yeah.
You know, and again, and I mentioned this the very first time you had me on, this goes all the way back to Columbine. So when Columbine happened, the SWAT team showed up, and the SWAT team was actually ordered to stand down because, quote, it was too dangerous. You know, now, and we can see the Columbine was, 98, 99 back then?
99.
Okay, so we're talking about 1999 to 2019, 20 years, nothing has changed. Cops are still just standing around because it's too dangerous to go in. So one of my solutions to this was, every cop should carry a long gun. And if there's two cops in a car, they should both have long guns. Mm-hmm. So when they run into these kinds of situations, they can match firepower for firepower. They have a little more confidence. And they don't have to wait for a SWAT team to show up or the National Guard or whatever the hell else. Mm-hmm. Cops in Germany carry some serious firepower, and they have for years and years and years. I used to watch them walk around the airport there in Germany with MP5s, for Christ's sake. So
I've seen shit like that in Frankfurt.
Yeah, absolutely. European police in some countries, they tend to be pretty well geared up because of terrorism concerns and things like that. And even back in the 80s when I lived there, they had to worry about the Red Army faction and groups like that. So they still were pretty geared up back then. So
I do think that would be like an issue with police where, I could see that being an issue personally. Like for me, if I was a cop, like going into a situation where I know that I'm basically maybe not out-trained or outnumbered, but I'm definitely probably outgunned in the sense that I've got a 9mm, by default they carry a P11.
So let's talk about that real quick too, because this was another point I made before. This is one of the big arguments against arming teachers, is that, somebody with a pistol can't stand up to somebody with a rifle. Well, that's bullshit. Most of your shooters, most of these mass shooters are not professionally trained soldiers. They're kids or they're mentally disturbed adults or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I will take a 22 up against a scared kid with an AR-15 any day of the week. I'm going to have better fire control and everything else. And it's not about the caliber of the bullet. I just got to get one shot and it's over with. It's not like just because you have a rifle, you're automatically going to win the gunfight. No. You can miss just as easily as I do. And when you're talking about fighting inside of a crowded hallway of a school or something like that, you're actually probably going to be less accurate with a long gun.
True. This is true.
That's exactly why you see people, they maneuver through holding things tightly like this. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's just one of my things. Let's arm the cops better. Let's weed out the ones that are scared when they present themselves like that. And give cops the tools to do their job.
We still need to train them properly because we had the shooting. You had that shooting in Thousand Oaks where we lost a sheriff who had gone inside and was shot by an officer with a long gun that came on the scene late and didn't know he was inside. Yeah. So he shot through the window and killed. Was a blue on blue shooting, and that really sucks.
And listen, and that's the thing. I did not perform well in Iraq because I'm so superhero. I performed well because I trained constantly for years leading up to that war, right? And cops will tell you the same thing. They have to train constantly. And a lot of departments, sadly, they don't get to go to the range often enough. Cops should be going to the range minimum a couple of times a month. Minimum. Because if you're not constantly out there shooting, you lose that muscle memory. You do become less accurate.
I would say at least twice a week. That's just me. I would say at least twice a week. Couple times a month.
Minimum, yeah. Minimum is my thing. But a lot of times cops don't go to the range, but maybe once a year to certify. And there's very, very few people that are naturally good enough that they can just stroll around for months without pulling a trigger and whip it out and get a max score on a range. 99% of shooters out there can't do that. So you need to go to the range, train, get that muscle memory. And
simply knowing how to operate a weapon doesn't make you gold certified in how to shoot it.
Exactly. You've got to train.
It's just like anything else, when you're training, your muscles in general, you have to work slow at first and work on form. And then as your muscle memory builds, you can keep the form and go faster and lift heavier. And it's the same thing with everything else, and especially with a weapon, because you're not firing the damn thing that often. At least I hope you're not, because if you're firing your gun off at your house every day, something's wrong. Unless you live in the boondocks.
Yeah. But that's a great example. I know that I tend to shoot low and left, regardless of whether I'm using a pistol or a long gun. That's just something that I do. So if I'm out of practice when I go to the range, I notice instantly I'm shooting low and left. But if I've been going to the range on a fairly regular basis, I am on target almost immediately when my gun comes out of the case. It's just a matter of practice.
Yep. Yeah.
How often how often do you go to the range now?
Unfortunately, not very often. It's expensive. You're looking at $14 an hour plus ammo. So a trip to the range could run you $100. So if I'm lucky, I get once a month, and that's not nearly enough.
Same here.
More than I get.
I would definitely, and there's nowhere here to shoot my long guns. I get to shoot my long guns maybe once every 2 years. So there's really not. We do have a range here. I got to talk about Ocala National Forest Range for a minute. It's a state range set up in the forest. They've got a shotgun range. They've got a long gun range. You can shoot whatever you want out there, which is really nice. But there's no range control. And so you get these people who show up with legally modified weapons and things like that. People who have no range safety concept. 2 different times I've almost been shot out there. So, yeah, don't get to shoot my long guns very often. It's just not safe.
What do you got?
Oh, I've got a couple of AR-15s and Henry repeating arms, one of the old Yellow Boy rifles. 22 Magnum. That's a really nice one.
Betty Show, how's it going? No, we're not actually about ready to end. We still got quite a few topics to cover. How's it going, you ghost?
All right. Picking up more people. All right.
All right. So the next one's Antifa attacks in Oregon.
Yeah, we talked about that one already.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So Trump and his military parade. Everybody had a fit about that. I'm sure Tommy heard about that too.
Were you talking about the
July 4th parade?
Yeah.
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 So, of course, the left collectively freaked out because, oh my God, Trump is a fascist dictator and a military strongman. He's trying to imitate China and North Korea. That was their whole line. I don't know. It seems a little silly to me to spend millions of dollars on a military parade, but other presidents have done it. And July 4th is inherently a patriotic holiday. So, who cares in the long run? It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think I did hear, like, again, on Reuters, or whatever the hell it's called this morning, that people were flipping out about, like how he pulled out all the stops for the 4th of July and said that the only reason he did it is he's trying to deter from people actually paying attention to the election and everything. It's like, you know what? Just once.
Yeah, the election is over a year away. And we're supposed to have a July 4th parade throw us from our thoughts. Oh my God, I forgot who to vote for because of the July 4th parade.
Last year.
Yeah.
It's just like what irritation is like, I would just like, to enjoy and be proud of the fact that I'm American for 5 fucking minutes without somebody telling me that it's wrong to be proud of.
See, and that's a great point. We've talked about that a little bit before. Having any kind of patriotic or nationalistic tendencies now is a horrible thing to the left. You can't be proud of America.
No, and not at all.
Again, waving an American flag is now people are calling that a fascist symbol and saying that you're acting like a Nazi. I saw that. It was in regards to, it might have been the July 4th parade. Anyway, there was somebody had said that it reminded them of Nazi Germany with all the American flags up everywhere.
Somebody actually said that?
Yeah. So hanging a flag automatically equates, oh, this must be Nazi regalia just because we're hanging flags. Yeah. So
the pure stupidity of that statement just pisses me off.
Right, but again, there's a lot of people on the left who feel this way.
Well,
that's
then go to
Georgetown
fucking Canada.
Professor Dyson.
What's that, Tommy?
The Georgetown professor, Eric Dyson. No, not Eric. Michael Dyson. Eric Dyson's the science guy. So he was the one that was on the outside that the American flag is the same as a Nazi symbol.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Again, so just because you disagree with the policies of the government, you can't legitimately with a straight face say that the U.S. government is the same as Nazi Germany's government. That we've got the same policies, we're doing the same things. But that's exactly what they're trying to do. They make this comparison all the time. This goes back to what we talked about last week. They call these detention centers concentration camps. Again, strictly by the dictionary definition, yes, they're concentration camps. All right. But is that the same thing as a Nazi concentration camp where we're gassing millions of people? No, absolutely not. And they know that. And making that comparison is just a dog whistle. It's can't talk.
Virtue signaling?
Yes, thank you. Virtual signaling. They're just trying to rile up their base and convince everybody that if you're white and you're a Republican, you're a Nazi, and therefore you're evil and have to be defeated.
See, that's the thing. Is like all this is on the left. This is one thing that's kind of like gotten me tired about this. Like, I mean, I still find shit that pisses me off and want to bitch about it and like express my opinion about it and let's get it out there and hopefully other people, are happy to hear that somebody else, is willing to talk about feeling the same way that they feel. But I've gotten to this point where it gets kind of tiring bitching about shit because it almost feels like the only thing that the left can do is every week throw out a different hot plate issue. Throw something else out just to kind of stoke the fire a little bit. It's like that bonfire that's dying down, so you just throw a little bit more gasoline on it so it keeps going, hoping that fire will keep going until like you need it to, if that makes any sense.
Right.
Like they're just pulling shit out of the air.
And that's exactly what's happening. It's just it's obstruction politics. They don't have a plan. They don't have a good idea. Their policies wrecked our economy under Obama big time. And they don't have an answer for that. They don't know how to counteract Trump's successes. So they're just throwing out everything that they can be outraged about, trying to make it all about race and misogyny and everything else. So
and that's what it is. It's an outrage culture.
Yes. Yep, that's what it's become.
And I can tell you right now from personal experience living in Mexico that the thing is it's exactly how Mexico is as far as like, the condition of the country. It's one of those situations that in Mexico, quite literally, that you sit there and you see little things you might be able to change, tweak to make the country better. But then like when you take a step back and you look at the whole spectrum of the situation, you're like, dude, it's just too fucked up to fix. And what's happening is, generally speaking, when we have political issues, we have 1, 2, maybe 3 political issues that really stand out and it is a primary focus. Immigration, gun control, a current war or conflict that's going on at that particular point in time. And that's the focus. That's where we kind of like look at things. But the problem is everything is a hot button issue now. There is no political focus. It's just that's what it is. And there's no way to get around it. It's like you can't argue every point every single time. It's too much to keep up on.
And again, this is like you said, it's outrage culture and it's obstruction politics. But then I want to go back to something we talked about a couple weeks ago. AOC and Ted Cruz ended up agreeing and co-sponsoring legislation about not letting politicians become lobbyists after they leave office. So it's entirely possible for the left and the right to agree on shit and work on it if they'll just do that. And I think a large part of it is the media. They would stay out of it and quit stoking this kind of shit and just start reporting the news the way they used to 20 years ago. I think our country could actually govern itself.
Yeah. Yeah, instead of interjecting their opinions.
I gotta disagree. What really happened specifically 20 years ago was, just do the math in my head, that was right before Bush, at the end of Clinton, and before him was HW, and before him was Reagan. But even so, there was very little real governing going on. When you have Bush, Clinton, Bush again, Obama, these guys have all been on the side of bureaucrats. They believe they're the elites, and they believe that we ought to sit down and shut the hell up. We're not the guys to tell the people how to run the country or how to even run our own lives. They believe that they can run our lives, that they can give us rules to play by, and that they're the guys that get to do it, and they get to make as much money as they can rake in to people coming to kiss the ring as possible. This has got to be turned around. And for those people that do that, those people that do insider trading, those people have to be hauled off. And we've let way too much of that go on for way, way, way too long. People go to Washington to get rich. It's a mining town, and the gold that they're mining is your tax dollars and mine.
Absolutely, and there's an easy way to do that. I think there ought to be some kind of a law that your net worth gets examined the day you come in office, and the day you leave. If there's anything that's untowards there, you suddenly became a millionaire when you were earning $28,000 the day you went in. I mean, maybe they need to look at that. And there definitely should be legislation that you should not be allowed to be a lobbyist at any point in your life after you've been a politician. That just creates a revolving door of corruption.
I completely agree with that. I mean, there's really not much I can even add to that. I just agree with it. The statement.
Except for it has to be more than just the politician. It has to be the bureaucrats. James Comey left the FBI to go to work for Lockheed, put $16 million in his pocket, and comes back and runs the FBI. That's one hand washing the other for money.
Yeah.
And those bureaucrats that do that crap need to have their asses hauled to jail.
Absolutely. Yeah, we need some, and that's why I was amazed that AOC of all people agreed with Ted Cruz of all people that, they were going to write this legislation and get that to happen. So I hope that passes.
I was going to vote for him until he just kind of disappeared.
Oh, he's still out there doing his thing.
Absolutely. And I would have voted for him but I was really thinking that Cruz would be the only one that could be, Rubio would be the one that would be elected, not Cruz. So I was going to vote for Rubio. Then I found out Rubio was a snake. So, I guess you got what you got there in Florida. There's some pretty good guys. Who was the Republican that's now sitting on the Intelligence Committee that was the Republican governor? Now he's a Democratic senator. Not Scott.
Charlie Crist?
Chris. Oh, what a big bastard.
Yeah, he's pretty well worthless. Of course, so was Scott. I mean, Scott was corrupt with his dealings in the hospital industry, so. Yeah, we called him Governor Skeletor out here because he looked like Skeletor from the He-Man cartoons.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. So, see, that's a perfect example of political commentary and humor that should be allowed. But I guarantee you that there's somebody out there who loves Rick Scott so much that they're going to scream, "Oh, he shouldn't be allowed to say that."
Oh, that's when we say, we don't give a shit. We say what we want.
That's right.
It's a free country.
Wasn't that the Florida congresswoman that said people that make fun of congressmen should be hauled to jail?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't hear that one, but it wouldn't surprise me if it came from somebody's mouth in Florida.
She's a black congressman that wears a cowboy hat from Florida.
I'm not sure.
Oh, my gosh. Where did I see? I'll find it and show it to you.
Yeah. So, while we're speaking about politicians, moving on to the next topic, just real quick, I wanted to talk about Kamala Harris. The only reason she's in the limelight right now is not because of her policies or anything else. I mean, I know the media likes her because she's an attractive woman and whatnot, but the only reason she's in the limelight right now is because she got emotional and teared up when responding to Joe Biden during the Democratic debate and talking about busing for education, and so she had a personal story to relate. And so she got her little moment and made for a great soundbite because she got under Joe Biden's skin and made him look bad. That does not equate to Kamala Harris being a good presidential candidate. Her policies are no different than anybody else that was up there on the stage. Some are just further left than the others, but she wants free government health care for all. She wants, massive gun control policies and everything else.
None of which is actually realistic.
Yeah, none of which is realistic. She's not going to get any of it done. Because just like anything else, how many times does it happen? We get a Democratic president in, and then you see the Congress goes Republican, and so they're not going to get anything to happen in that situation anyway. Mm-hmm. Even if the Republicans only control one house, it'll be enough to obstruct. So,
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's just the first time hearing about her, so I can't make a comment.
Well, I've been kind of following her because she's been kind of hinting that she's going to run for a while now. But on the flip side, the right's been really unfair to her as well. Months ago, she was on a black radio show, and they'd asked her if she smoked marijuana, and she said, "Yep," and I inhaled. And they asked her what kind of music she listened to, and I think she said Snoop Dogg and something else. Well, then somebody did some research and figured out that when she was in college, Snoop Dogg wasn't even an artist yet. And so they called her out for lying. Well, turned out Snoop Dogg came out like a year after she graduated college, so I could see how it'd be easy for her to conflate that. But the right was making it this huge thing. Oh, she's a liar. She was just trying to ingratiate herself to the people of America and this and that and the other.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? So it's obstruction politics on both sides. And I get really frustrated with the Republicans as much as I do with the Democrats sometimes.
No, same here. Same here.
The thing about it is we can't say that they're equal though, because even though there are some, the problem with the Republicans is that they believe that there is a moral core to people, and that they will do the right thing in the end. That they'll let people live and let live. That's our basic belief system. Right. The left is like, let's destroy them. Let's do death threats. Let's we'll dox this 8-year-old girl and send known pedophiles into her neighborhood. This is the kind of stuff that they do. They don't want, they don't want to say, hey, I want to fight your idea. And I think I said this last week. They don't think that we are people with bad ideas.
They think we're bad people.
People with ideas.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, and here's the thing. I think that they're learning this vitriolic hate in colleges, a lot of them, and in high schools. They're hearing it from their teachers and their professors and buying into it.
Oh, yeah.
Because kids aren't like that now. I teach middle school, and I'm telling you, even the kids that have very leftist ideas and are very socialistic in their thinking don't have that level of hatred for the other side. They just don't. So they're learning that at some point after they leave middle school. And I got to imagine that they're getting it from a lot of these professors and whatnot that we read about in the news.
Yep. No, and if there does happen to be a professor that's like, Jordan Peterson, that stands against, particular ideas, then they get, blacklisted, banned, fired, deplatformed.
Absolutely.
And it's just, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's like college, for me, at least when I was there, which, was a while ago, not too long ago, was a point in time in my life where I challenged ideas and my ideas were challenged, and I learned a lot about myself, not just personally, but politically and, in every other way, and also about the world. But to sit there and say that there's only one ideology that should stand and that we should indoctrinate, these young people to create a better socialist society later on, this idea that someone out there thinks that socialism is really going to work, that it really has a potential. It just needs to be implemented the right way. I mean, just look at the state of the United States right now. I mean, the political climate, the emotional climate in the United States. I mean, it's tense. It's tense. And I don't even fucking live there, and I can feel the tension.
So talking about that real quick, I was watching Vice News before we got on tonight, and I actually really enjoy Vice News. They do some great reporting, even if it is heavily laced with, leftist propaganda. But, I mean, they do some really good reporting. And anyway, they were talking to this group of Democratic Socialists of America people in Las Vegas that were watching the Democratic debates. And the one guy was saying socialism is the only answer to problems like climate change. It's the only way we're going to save the planet. And see, and there's the problem. It's no different than the never Trumpers. There can't just be one answer to this. There's got to be more than one answer. And you're never going to convince me that instituting an authoritarian socialist government that has total control over our lives is the only way we're going to save this planet. There's got to be a better way to do it.
We're already as clean as we're going to need to be. It's not America that's polluting the world. It's China. And until we, it's other countries. Why are we having?
Okay, but even if it is us, again, that's not even the point, though. And I think you know that, Tommy. Even if it is us, the idea that we have to give up all of our personal freedoms and control over our lives to the U.S. government and the socialists that would be in charge at that point, and trust that somehow that very small group of people is magically going to make all the right decisions to save the planet, that's a fucking fantasy. The only way that would ever work, in theory, we'd have to have a world government, first of all, and that's not going to happen. So it's ridiculous that they want us to give up control of our lives to supposedly save the environment. There's better ways to accomplish.
Dude, that sounds more like a nightmare,
right,
than a dream.
So if they want to lower global temperatures by a couple of degrees or whatever in the next few decades, there's other ways to do that. There's absolutely other ways to do that. We could plant 1 trillion trees. There was a great article about that today. If we plant 1 trillion trees on this planet, we have enough open land to do that. It would suck enough carbon out of the air to accomplish exactly what they want to accomplish. And guess what? Everybody gets to stay free. So isn't that wonderful? And we could plant 1 trillion trees around the world relatively cheaply.
And quickly.
Absolutely. The Chinese have been doing it. They've been planting trees along the edge of the Gobi Desert because the desert has been encroaching into Chinese cities and towns. And since they've planted millions of trees along the edge of the Gobi Desert, now the desert has actually started receding. Okay, so we know that planting trees can fight desertification of the land. So why not? Why not just plant a bunch of trees? Because that isn't really their goal. They don't really want to save the environment. They want control over our lives.
Bingo.
Yep. No, and that's literally what it comes down to, and that's literally kind of like that's the point where I really think I got inflamed with all of this, because I don't want to say that I wasn't politically active prior to Trump and all of that. I mean, I was very aware, of what was going on. But once I started noticing, again, I'm going to reiterate my point. I keep saying this. I've said this about for 4 episodes now. For me, it all started, like, at least I noticed it starting, with the fucking Starbucks cups, the Christmas cups, that they weren't inclusive, that they made people feel excluded during the holiday season, forcing Starbucks, to take what they thought to be socially conscious action and removing the Christmas cups and just implementing their normal cups for the season. Which, for as small as that may be, it was a precedent. It showed people that the victim mentality and the rage culture, the outrage culture, gets results. That's what it did. And then little by little, I started noticing more and more shit. And then when Trump came about, and then Antifa started growing, and then it really just kind of blew up and got out of control. And then when you sit there and you look at it, the only thing that's happening, we're not talking about the betterment of fucking society. We're talking about the end of our liberty.
Right. And see, and there's the problem. There's the fundamental differences of ideas. You, Tommy, and I all agree that would be the end of our society and the end of our personal liberties and freedoms, and we couldn't live in a society like that. The other side says that if we don't do that, we're all doomed. So how do we come to a reconciliation here? Because we've mentioned over and over again, we don't want to deal with this in a violent fashion. We've got to find a way to come to some kind of an agreement and learn to live together.
Well, I completely agree with you, and that's the first course of action, is to try to find a way to open a discussion, like some type of verbal discourse, and have a conversation and see where we can go if it can happen. But I do believe George Washington said this. Okay, quote me if tell me if I'm wrong here. Don't quote me. But us as Americans would prefer to die on our feet than live on our knees.
Well, I've heard variations of that quote over the years, and it's something I've always believed in. Absolutely.
Same here.
I would rather go out atop a pile of brass than living in chains.
You know, and I completely and fully believe in that statement, regardless of who said it. I mean, I have heard that it was George Washington that said it. And that's I don't want to be the extremist here, but that's the situation that I feel that we're in. It's very quickly progressing to that scale to where it's literally going to be a situation where are we going to die on our feet, or are we going to live the rest of our lives out on our knees? Because this outrage culture, as much as it pains me to say it, it's working. Companies are backing these people. George Soros, which is even richer than Donald Trump, is backing these people. You know, for whatever you want to consider them being the minority, we are very quickly becoming the minority.
Oh, without a doubt, there is a lot of money behind them. I mean, and there's a fair bit on that side of the right too. You know, there's a few different billionaires that are backing conservative causes out there. Not as many as there ought to be, I don't think. I think when people accumulate a lot of money, a lot of them get this ego complex that they can fix the world because they do have so much power concentrated in their hands.
Well, then do what fucking Bill Gates does. Go to other countries that don't have it.
Well, like Jeff Bezos is a great example. Again, saw this on Vice News. He was talking about how he wants to use his billions to fund his space company, Blue Origin.
Yeah.
All right. And that's how he plans to change the world. You know, there's other things he could do with that money to have a bigger impact on the world, I would say, but that's what he wants to do with his. See, he's got this vision that he's got to somehow save the world. Bill Gates, he doesn't just fuck around in other countries. He screws around the American educational system. He has put billions of dollars into this push where they go into these districts and say, if you adopt our curriculum, you teach things our way, and we will give you all this free money. But you have to teach our curriculum our way. You know, so he and people like him are trying to take control of our educational system in this country, and they're doing a pretty good job of it. This is why we've got such a mess with standardized testing. So that all comes from Democrats. You don't see Republicans preaching that.
Well, I mean,
of course, they're not any better. Republicans want to take money out of public taxes and support charter schools, and I have a problem with that. So.
And we're never gonna have a perfect system. You know, I've come to realize that a perfect system doesn't exist. But the United States of America has come very close to creating, I don't want to say a utopian society because it's very far from the truth, but you know, a livable place, like a place that you can truly be happy living in. You know, and not worry about the powers that be, you know, arresting you because you expressed an opinion or because you dress a certain way or think a certain way.
Right. Well, the thing about America is the potential is there for everybody. It's not saying that America is the perfect place and that you're never going to encounter racism or sexism or whatever. And you're not going to have a problem with crime or hunger or, you know, every country's got their issues, but America has the most potential for anybody in the world to come and be successful. And you're certainly the most free here than you are anywhere else in the world. Right? Mm-hmm. Everywhere else in the world, there is some restriction on personal liberties that we have here, whether that's gun ownership, whether it's free speech, whether that's right to religion, whatever it may be. Every country in the world has restrictions on rights that we have here upon birth. So bottom line, you're in the freest country in the world if you live here. This is your opportunity to do something with it, rather than just bitch about how so-and-so's kept you down.
Oh, that's always what happens, right? The grass is always greener on the other side, right?
Right.
You know, I always hear like all these like so-called, you know, enlightened hipster dipshits talking about how European culture is such a wonderful thing, and you know, the art and the architecture and the liberty and the freedom. It's like, do you even know what you're talking about?
You know,
like, do you realize that the United States was responsible for cultivating some of the most famous and intelligent people in history?
and listen, I lived in Europe for years as a teenager when my dad was stationed there in the army, and I loved it. And we traveled all over the place, and we experienced the culture, and we learned the languages, and we ate the food and drank the wine and did all that. And it was a great experience. But just because something is old doesn't mean it's necessarily better. And our founding fathers knew that. They watched how Europe had developed over the centuries. They saw that Europe was not getting it right, was probably never going to get it right. And so they set up a better system.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's worked out really well. America certainly has its problems, but that's stuff that we can work on if we'll just quit being outraged at each other.
Yeah, which is something that, you know, we're doing like all the fucking time. It's just like, I'd like to sit there and say that you can't, you honestly, you can't fight hate with hate. You can't do it because it just stokes the fire more. But it's just one of those things that you reach the end of your rope and you're just like, okay, now what? I've tried talking to these people. I get screamed out. I get, you know, soapboxed. You know, I just get, you know, completely ripped into. You know, I want to have a conversation and try to make some headway with this. What do you do?
You know, and that's just it. We got to keep in venues like this. We have to continue talking to each other and engaging and doing our best. I'm going to continue talking until the shooting starts. You know, at some point, if I see a brigade of socialists walking down Chicago with rifles and, you know, they're getting ready to start a war or whatever, then that's fine. And we'll go ahead and do that. But I would rather talk.
Same here. I would much rather have a conversation with somebody.
Yeah. So I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to continue trying to teach the students in my care to look at both sides of an issue. I do my very best not to tell them what I personally believe. I just give them both sides and let them try to figure it out. I try to do my best with my children the same way and my nephews.
Mm-hmm.
We all need to do that. Instead of trying to teach our kids, you have to think this way because this is the right way. Give your kids both sides and let them figure it out on their own.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with that statement. Completely agree. And we are just kind of like, I know we're not done right now. We still got a couple of things left in here, I think.
Do a couple more.
And there was something that you wanted to talk about that I finally want to give you kind of like this floor to talk about. But just to let people know, we are now also on this channel streaming to YouTube, DLive, Facebook, and eventually Twitch when their API is fixed. So we are officially restreaming this broadcast simultaneously to currently 4 different platforms.
All right.
And we have officially reached 300 listeners overall, average listeners.
Very nice.
We broke that 300 mark.
Well, welcome everybody.
Yep. That was kind of stupid, but so what do you want to hit? What do you want to hit next, James? Do you want to talk about what you said you wanted to talk about? Like we talked about 4th of July, and you said you wanted to mention something.
Oh, I don't even remember.
The PTSD.
Oh yeah, I was just saying. During the 4th, it's always rough because not the fireworks quite so much, but at least in my neighborhood, because I don't live in the best area, there's always somebody out there shooting their guns. And I mean, that's stupid. Bullets coming back down can kill. But shooting off a gun to celebrate the 4th of July or any other holiday, I don't know. It just seems irresponsible to me, and it definitely triggers PTSD. We had that problem. Was it New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve? I think it was Christmas Eve this past year. Neighbors shooting their guns, and it triggered me big time. And I was ready to climb up on the roof with my rifle and start putting the rounds back down range, you know. Thankfully my wife knows my triggers and she got me calmed down. But it's rough for vets. I mean, and there's vets all across this country that deal with this all the time. People shooting their guns off for no reason. It's aggravating to me. Pet peeve. Living with PTSD is no fun.
I could imagine. I mean, I don't know from personal experience on that level, but I can definitely imagine it's definitely something that needs to be taken into consideration. I mean, unfortunately, in general, I think that our veterans are unfairly treated and looked over in today's society, and not taken care of in the way that they should be.
You know, I've got a good friend at work who says the same thing all the time. And he goes even further. He thinks, once you've been to combat and been injured and that kind of thing, that you should just basically get a free pass for the rest of your life. That's his opinion. I wouldn't go that far, but my thing is, God, I don't even know what I was going to say now. I think I get treated pretty well. I mean, yes, the VA healthcare has been really, really shitty at times. Mm-hmm. It really has been. But at other times, it has also been there to save my life. Particular psychiatrist in Colorado twice saved my life, when I was having a really hard time dealing. The medical care a couple of times has helped me out with some pretty bad issues. I'm getting ready to have surgery on my foot again here. So for all my complaints about the VA, they've also done some good on it. Also they sent me to college for free. I didn't pay for my college education, not one penny.
Yeah.
They help me finance 2 houses now by guaranteeing the loan. For those that don't know, what the VA does is they will guarantee $30,000 of your mortgage, which makes it easier for you to qualify for a mortgage, especially if you don't have a large down payment or something. So basically, they help me buy 2 different homes. And then I get my disability check every month, and I'm still working. So that's extra money for me, and it's tax-free money for the rest of my life based on my injuries that I sustained. So overall, the VA has treated me pretty well.
Is that the same amount of money, or is it auto adjust?
No, I get a cost of living increase. Absolutely. Yeah,
okay,
it went up almost another $60 this year, I think.
Okay, there you go.
So some years it's more, some years it's less, but I mean it's a fairly significant check I get, and it makes all the difference when it comes to paying the bills and buying food for the kids and everything else. And the nice thing is, because it is tax-free, it's 100% mine. I don't have to pay taxes on it at all at the end of the year. I can claim it as income if I want to apply for a loan or whatever. It's a nice benefit. But on the flip side,
that's good.
I did pay in blood for it. So.
Well, I mean, then that's why, unfortunately, the only thing that, us as citizens, as civilians can do is just thank you. I mean, I wish I could do more. I mean, one of the things that I do, I don't mean to plug any of my other businesses, into this podcast. This podcast is pretty well segregated from the rest of the stuff that I manage, but I do want to, it's relevant. So I've always kind of wanted to give back to veterans. And I know one thing that veterans like to do, at least a lot of the ones that I know, to kind of deal with PTSD, social anxieties, things like that, is, they stream. They play video games. They like their video games, and they like to stream. Now, but I also know that, there's plenty of them that are trying to do that as a job. So they're not working a 9 to 5. Maybe they can't find one. Maybe, they've gotten a couple. It just hasn't worked out for whatever the reason may be. They figure, well, let me turn, my passion for video games into a career. And unfortunately, because of that, a lot of them can't really afford, design work for their streams, like to make the stream look like, for example, what this looks like. So what I did, and this is for any business, not just streaming. What I did is it's not a legal, like non-for-profit, but it is. I'm working on it, getting to that point. But being in Mexico is a little difficult. It's called DFV, which is Designs for Veterans, which is literally a service that if you're a veteran and if you want to start up a business, you want to start up a stream, I will design, and the people that I work with will design everything for you free of cost, no cost.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great veterans groups out there that do things for people. And, for those of you that are out there, some things you can do. First of all, thanking us for our service. Most of us appreciate that. I always tell people, thank you for paying your taxes. And seriously, that's the way you can show support. Be a good citizen, pay your taxes, because we can't fight the wars without beans and bullets. And we can't get the aftercare from the VA without your tax dollars. So you do those things for us, and that's a good show of support. And if you're going to donate to a veterans charity, do your research. I'm specifically going to call out Wounded Warrior Project right now. They spend most of their money on executive salaries and parties and crap like that, and they end up giving very, very little back to veterans. So if you're going to donate money to a veterans charity, or whether it's in person or online or whatever, go to a website like Charity Navigator first and do your research on the charities and make sure that they're giving back the vast majority of their money to the veterans. And it's not just sitting in a bank account somewhere or going to salaries or whatever.
And I was actually completely unaware of that when we met. I was actually, the same time that we did the interview, I was running a fundraiser for Wounded Warrior Project, and almost lost you as an interviewee because of it.
Yeah, no, it's just one of those things that, as a veteran, I didn't even know about it until I saw the news reports and looked into it. So it's not like even veterans are experts and all of that. There's hundreds and hundreds of different charities out there now, especially because of the wars and the fact that we've been at war for 20 years. There's so many different charities, and they're local and they're nationwide, and people get confused and they hear the big names over and over and over again. And the ones that manage to partner well with these big companies like Wounded Warrior Project have, they get the name recognition and they bring in the vast majority of the money. So people just assume, if they're partnered with Nike or Coca-Cola or McDonald's or whoever it may be, that they must be okay. They must have been vetted. And that's not always the case. So it's just like with politics, people, you got to be responsible for educating yourselves here.
Exactly. All right. So what else we got over here on the list?
I don't know. What do you want to do next? India. We could do India, finish up with this here for tonight, get the rest later, I guess.
Yep.
So the entire Indian subcontinent, that's India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, they are dealing with a pretty severe water shortage right now. And a lot of that has been because they've been victims of their own success. So Bangalore, India is a great example. Bangalore is a huge IT hub. A lot of companies are locating there and opening up because they have a pretty educated populace. Yeah. Well, Bangalore has grown so fast. And for those who don't know, Bangalore sits on top of a mountain. So Bangalore has grown so fast, they paved basically the entire top of the mountain. So now when it rains, the rainwater has no ground to soak into. So the rainwater ends up basically running down the mountain. So the wells are running dry, and now they're having to truck water up the mountain to get water to the city just so people can live.
That's insane.
Right. And that's just one city. And this is happening all across India and Pakistan and places like that. All these places are fed by the Himalayan mountain watershed. And because those glaciers are retreating, there's less water in the Ganges River, which feeds all these communities, and it's causing water shortage issues. Some of these cities around the world that are dealing with that, like Cape Town, South Africa, Venice, Italy, New York, and America here, these countries are actually starting to sink into the ground because of the water table depletion under them. They're pumping so much water out of the ground that the ground is actually sinking.
Wow.
Yeah, so, we've seen news stories about buildings sinking 8 inches into the ground and things like that. That's exactly how we get sinkhole activity here in Florida, which is quite common. Florida is mostly limestone underneath. There's no bedrock like there is in a lot of part of the country. Rainwater will wash away the limestone, and that causes the ground to collapse into the hole. So we're seeing this happening all over the world. The population is growing so fast, we're pumping out so much water for agriculture and whatnot, it's causing depletion of the water table. So we've got to look at better recycling methods. We've got to look at desalination. And we've got to definitely do some things here.
Yeah, it definitely sounds it. I mean, wow. I think that's kind of like the consequence to just human expansion in general, though. I mean, I think it's not the first time that something like this has happened. It's probably not going to be the last time that something like this has happened.
Oh, no. Human cities have risen and fallen because of overpopulation, ever since our race started settling in large cities like this. And I've told my kids this. I don't think humans were ever meant to live in these giant metropolises with millions of people. I think it turns people insane. I honestly do. Being around that many people, being that crowded and that dirty, I think people just start to lose their mind a little bit. And I think that's why you see really, truly heinous crimes coming out of big cities. And that's why you see high crime rates coming out of cities.
Mm-hmm. I think the more people you put into one location, I mean, obviously, everything's going to increase. You know, besides like the economy and prices and things like that, violence is going to increase. You know, just everything, because you have so many people with like crossing pathways in their brain, occupying one space. You know, I mean, me personally, I've always been a city kid, even though I've grown up in the country. Never liked living in the country, never liked, you know, not being close to anything, being close to society. I've always fed off of, you know, people around me. You know, and I love living in a large, you know, metropolitan area. Like, I fully enjoy it. Now, where my apartment's located is actually, it's close to other, like, apartments and houses and things like that, but it feels pretty far away due to the park. There's a fairly large park in front of the apartment building, the complex. And the rest of like the really dense apartment areas are like on the other side of that park. So though I'm like, you could probably knock a couple shots off and hit somebody's house easily, you know.
Right.
It still feels like, you know, you got that sense of privacy, you get the crickets at night, stuff like that. So I get like those good memories from living in the boondocks with my mom, you know, but the accessibility of living in the city. No frogs. No frogs. Mexico's like France. They like eating them. So, yeah, okay, I want one more. There's one more I want to cover here if you got time.
Yeah, no.
So I really want to talk about this Navy SEAL charged for murder and found not guilty.
Oh, yeah, great. So Eddie Gallagher, so for those who haven't heard, Navy SEAL, he was charged with a couple of crimes. One was murder of an ISIS fighter. I guess this kid, he was a teenager. He was wounded, and supposedly this guy killed him while he was in their custody and wounded. So for those that don't know, that's a war crime. You're not supposed to kill an enemy soldier unless you're in active combat, kind of thing. And he was also charged with taking a photo of a dead fighter, which is something you're not supposed to do. During the trial, a different Navy SEAL testified that he was the one that killed him. So that was kind of a big shock. Nobody expected that to happen. Long story short, they found him not guilty of the murder. They did find him guilty of taking a picture with the dead enemy combatant. So they reduced him in rank, and he's going to go ahead and retire. But he's not going to go to prison. I don't know the truth. I wasn't there. I didn't hear all the testimony the jury heard. But based on what I've seen in the media, you know, I don't know that this guy should have been charged.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't military tribunals like closed off from the public? Like it's not a public tribunal.
Yeah, you're not going to see Fox News in there or anything like that.
So yeah, because I know that like anything that happens, like war crime rise, anything like that, like it's like military law is like a whole nother world to civilian law.
Right. Yeah. What a lot of people don't know, when you go in the military, you effectively give up your constitutional rights for the duration of your service. I mean, you don't have the right to say whatever the hell you want to say. You certainly don't have your Second Amendment rights if you're living on base. There's a lot of things that they can restrict you from. And that's something you understand when you go in. You're giving up those rights to protect everybody else's, basically.
Wait, you can't have a weapon while living on base?
So, like if you're living in the barracks as a single enlisted soldier, like I did for most of my time in, and you own a weapon, it has to be kept in the armory locked up. All right, you can't have it in your barracks room, for example. You know, those kinds of things. And depending on the branch and the post, you may or may not be allowed to have a weapon in your quarters housing if you're a family man with a wife and kids. Yeah, so there's a lot of different things.
I mean, I would imagine living on base, there's a significantly less chance that somebody's going to break into your house and rob you.
There's still crime that happens on bases. There's something that's becoming more widely reported now with child sex crimes happening a lot on military bases.
Oh, it's just sick.
Yeah. But no, I mean, generally you're not going to see property crimes and things like that like you do in your normal neighborhood. You're right. There's not too much of that.
Huh.
So, but yeah, anyway, you do give up a lot of your rights. And one of those is you still get a jury trial and everything else in the military, but the way things are done and run there, if you're in trouble in the military, you're generally not going to get out of it. You don't see them plea bargaining. You know, you don't see them saying, okay, well, we're going to give you probation this one time because it's your first offense, you know, that kind of thing. If you're going to trial in the military, you fucked up, and you're probably going to be going to prison. You know, it's not like in the civilian world at all.
Well, that's why I wanted to talk about this, is that was what was so shocking to me, was that this guy was charged with murder and got off.
Well, and I think a big part of that was because the other SEAL said that he was the one that killed this kid. Now, I don't know if he was lying to protect his friend or if he really did it or what, because several other people testified that Eddie Gallagher was the killer. But regardless, I think that was a big part of the reason why the jury found him not guilty of the murder charge.
So is it still under like the concept of needing to be proven guilty beyond the shadow of a doubt kind of thing? Or?
Oh yeah, no, the standard of proof is still there and everything else. It's just that, you know, the military is not going to take you to a court martial unless they got a slam dunk case. Because if they're taking you to a court martial, it's because they want to kick your ass out. They want to put you in prison. They want to bust you down. They want to discharge you.
Dishonorably, obviously.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you're getting court-martialed, you're not getting an honorable.
So did he get an honorable or no?
I don't know. I didn't see that. I guess I'd have to look that up. I just saw that he was found not guilty and was going to retire after he got a reduction.
Tommy, your 2 cents?
Yeah, let me throw this in. My concern is the military has been invaded by a bunch of effing lawyers. Lawyers that don't have our country's interest in the best heart, and they certainly don't have the troops' best interest at heart. And I'm always concerned when this type of crap happens. Look at General Clapper, who worked for Obama and literally wanted to give a pink hall pass to Russian in the Pentagon. The Pentagon people said, we'll quit. We're out. There are guys that are these lawyer types that, you know, they don't have our best interest. They've come through the same schools that have polluted thousands and thousands of people. And now they're, it's not good. You know, the lawyers were the ones that were calling, you know, were saying who you could shoot, who you couldn't. And I've seen, you know, generals who are on the battlefield who are looking to lawyers to see if they can approve a shot. You know,
yeah.
If they can. This has got to stop. Lawyers need to be out of there.
You're absolutely right. That should not be happening. Lawyers should not be second guessing shot callers at all. Because it's no different than the cops. They're talking about this with police in this country now. The cops are afraid to do their job. They're afraid to pull their gun. They're afraid to pull the trigger. They're afraid to use any kind of force. They're afraid to confront suspects. They're just afraid of doing their job now because they're worried that A, they're going to get videotaped, or B, they're going to get fired, or whatever. Because that's the climate we're in now, especially if they're of different races.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My brain's fried.
Right? It's insanity, that's for sure.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the world right now is insanity. I mean, I think the world has always been insanity. I just think the thing is like when you get older, you start to pay attention to it a little bit more. And then you're like, wow, what have I been missing?
Yeah, and again, this is why I encourage my students to read the news in the newspaper and to watch the news on TV and not just get their news from Facebook and their friends.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that you understand what's going around, so that when you do grow up and you're a voting age, you have a background and knowledge and you know what the hell you're doing.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing about... Go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, I was just going to real quick. One of the best examples of this was back during Obama's election. They went and interviewed this woman and asked if she was going to vote for Mitt Romney, and she said no. And they said, why? And she said, because he sucks. That's what she knew about Mitt Romney, was that he sucked. Okay.
Well, there we go.
Right. See, so if that's your sole knowledge in the political landscape of this country, how the hell are you qualified to go out and vote?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and unfortunately, there are millions and millions of people in this country that are at that level of education that are.
Well, that was what happened with Trump. It's like, you ask, why are you going to vote for Trump? No, why? He's a racist.
Right.
Really? Like, that's all you got?
Right, and that's exactly it. Because we're living in a country where everybody wants that 30-second sound bites, and now even 30 seconds is too long. Now they want a 5-second sound bite.
It used to be 15 minutes of fame. Now it's 10 seconds of fame. That's what everybody wants.
Yeah.
I mean, I also think the advent of like social media is kind of like really screwed us over. Oh my God!
Listen, if you could go back in time and kill anybody, who would you kill? The default answer is always Adolf Hitler. Fuck that. I would go back and kill Mark Zuckerberg. Right? Facebook has done more to tear this country apart than anything else.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was okay when it was like MySpace and shit like that. Like, it wasn't taken too seriously. It was just, people looked at it as like, oh, it's just something the kids do. Like, you're not everybody wanted an account. And then something happened with Facebook that it no longer was like a young hip thing. Now everybody had a Facebook account.
Right. But the thing is, it's not even Facebook in and of itself is the problem. They created it, because now you've got kids that are addicted to Instagram and Snapchat and all these other platforms. And all that matters is how many followers they have or how many likes they get, because they think that that's what's important. They think that somehow gives them power and an ability to make a living in the world.
I watched this movie. I can't remember the name of it. I'll look it up and I'll tell you, like, through Skype soon. I watched this movie on Netflix. It's like a B-rate film. But the philosophical nature, it's very, you watch it and you're like, this is so fucking dumb. But what happened was, society got to a point with social media that words were banned. Like, people could no longer write words. Like, you couldn't read books. All books were burned. There was no written form of media. Like, you could have, your speech was normal, but you couldn't write anything down because books were labeled as being dangerous. And the way people communicated through text or through, like, written communication were fucking emojis. Like, that's what people were allowed to use. They were allowed to use emojis. And the entire movie was about a rebel group fighting to release books back into the world so people had access to literature.
You're talking about Fahrenheit 451, aren't you?
I think that is the name of it.
Yeah, that's actually based on a book. Yeah. The book was written decades ago.
Neil Stephenson wrote that book, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And listen, again, we're getting to that point where when you live in a society where some words are okay and some words aren't, depending on who you're speaking to, that's a problem. And that's my issue with the left. When they're telling me that you can't say certain things because it offends somebody, that's a problem for me. We live in a country where I'm supposed to be able to say whatever the hell I want to say.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. And I do think I am one of those people that do believe that the whole freedom of speech thing, regardless of companies being considered private companies, which they're not private. If you can buy, I've read up a little bit more about this, what we talked about last time, and technically, what people are calling like Twitter, Facebook, like all of these companies, they're calling them private companies. They're not private companies, they're public companies.
Right.
Because the public can, like, legally, if you have the money, if you have the billions upon billions upon billions of dollars, you could go in, you could buy enough shares and have a controlling share of the company. You can buy, if you wanted, 51% of the company and be able to manipulate the direction that company goes.
Right.
It's no longer a private company. It's no longer run by one single person. It's operated by a board members, and shareholders. That's what it's operated by. It's a public entity,
exactly.
which means, by my definition, if something is a public entity that enters the public space, then it gives up its right to control what's on it, basically, in the terms of a social media organization like Facebook or Twitter or things like that,
So
or YouTube.
that movie you had me watch called "You Can't Watch This."
Yeah. Did you like it?
I did. I enjoyed that movie very much. It made a great point, which is exactly what you just made, was in today's society, these social media platforms are how people are heard and how people exchange ideas. Technology has created that. And so when you have every technology company shutting down 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 people because they don't like what they've got to say, you're effectively banning their free speech. And like you're saying, if it's a public company, they shouldn't be able to do that.
Exactly.
So when you look at people like Laura Loomer being deplatformed
off of everything, that's like not just 1 or 2, that's fucking everything.
Right. So it's not like YouTube kicked her off and she's like, oh, okay, well, I'll go over here and do this. We talked about this. I don't like Louis Farrakhan. I don't like Alex Jones. I think they're both idiots. But for both of them to be deplatformed just because somebody doesn't like their ideas, I think is 100% wrong.
It is. It is. And the thing was, there was a huge difference. So just to clarify, last show we talked about the cake guy that got sued because he refused to do a cake, whatever. That's what we consider a private company. That is a private business. Okay. And him as a private business owner, you cannot buy shares in his company. You cannot, publicly access, aspects of his, it's 100% privately run and owned.
Right.
He has the right to pick and choose what he wants to do. Now, if he was a company like Walmart that had hundreds of thousands, of locations, it would have to be stipulated in terms of service. No sexually graphic imagery will be produced on a cake, ... It's perfectly within his right to do that. Now, just like it's perfectly in the right of companies to say, we don't support hate speech. That's fine. The problem is the specification. There is no specification of what people are considering hate speech.
And that's just it. Everybody can say anything is hate speech. And that's why I joke every time we do this podcast, you say something and I say that's hate speech. And it's because everything is hate speech now. Everything is.
Exactly. You can't express an opinion. An opinion is hate speech. And so I'm okay with a term of service. It's fine. I'm okay with YouTube saying, hey, we don't want pornography on this site. This is not for pornography. It's not, Pornhub. Okay, fine. That's great. I can completely be okay with that. Okay. But when you get people like Steven Crowder, Laura Loomer, Lauren Southern, Martina Marcota, all these people, are either getting, deplatformed, their videos are getting demonetized, it's a form of censorship. It's corporate censorship from a public company. It's a company in the public space. You can purchase shares of the company. I'm not saying it's a public company that it's publicly owned, but it's a public company in the sense that if you have the financial capability, you could own the majority share of Google.
Right. And I don't see how the left isn't outraged about that, about how a company can silence an American citizen.
Well, because they're silencing the people that they disagree with, so they don't give a shit.
Right. That's exactly it. So if YouTube was owned by conservatives and they turn around and start silencing all the lefties, what then? Right? But that's your point. They're
exactly.
As long as it's against the people they don't agree with, it's okay. And so that's the problem. We need to get back to where it's not okay for anybody. And that's why intelligent thinking people are conservatives.
See, it's because so one thing that I have a problem with that I'm noticing, and I'll close after this, but I want to get this out. So one thing I mentioned before is like the other pop-up websites that are popping up that allow conservative voices or say no censorship. So we're going to one extreme or the other here, and this is what I have a problem with. I believe that certain websites, like if you want to make a point, like a political point on a social media platform, doing it on a site where you could actually reach people that are interested in that point is good. Twitter, Facebook, things like that, where that it's not going to be drowned out by pornography ads or drowned out by people trying to sell their Snapchats for, private Snapchats, which unfortunately, when you go to websites like Gab, right? Like Gab AI or, BitChute, You know, they have a good concept. They don't want to censor people, but at the same time, they're allowing all sorts of muck on their site. They're not enforcing anything. They have no TOS.
Right.
So it's like, what do you expect to do with this? It's just going to turn into a shit show. Like the people that go on there hoping to have a political voice, there's no audience to reach. Because it's just a bunch of Chinese guys or people in Taiwan that, you know, want to sell their porn sites and make for you to click their ads and make a couple of bucks. You know, there has to be that happy medium. You can't have companies, huge companies like Google, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, banning people because they have right-wing or conservative ideals. You can't have people doing that, saying that that's hate speech.
If we get rid of the term hate speech, I think that could be a big step in the right direction, because anything can be hate speech.
I completely agree.
So instead, let's get really, really specific and talk about things like violent speech, you know, encouraging violence, saying you're going to assassinate somebody, things like that.
Like Madonna?
Right. See, so there's a great example. So Madonna talks about wanting to blow up the White House and this and that, and nothing happens to her. Okay? But then, and this happened just here in the last week, a group on Reddit called the Donald, they were banned because members were talking about violence against Oregon officials. You know, we talked about all that. It was a militia group that was threatening to shoot cops. So that group got quarantined, and they've been warned, and they may very well get completely banned. Now, people are saying that, oh, well, that's just silencing Trump supporters and this and that and the other. Well, no, they specifically went after them because they were making threats about violence against Oregon police officers. Okay, so in this particular case, I happen to agree with them, but Reddit has also got a very long history of allowing really, really repugnant speech and shutting down speech they just don't agree with. So,
exactly.
Excuse me.
But if I'm not mistaken, Reddit is Reddit public? Did Reddit go public? Can you?
Honestly, I don't know if Reddit's public or not. I don't think so. I don't think they've had an IPO yet.
Yeah, I don't think they have.
I think that's part of why they've been working to clean up their image and get rid of some of the more extreme content. This started a few years ago. They got rid of a couple of other groups. They got rid of a really racist group called Coontown. And then I remember reading about some jailbait forums that they got rid of, where people were posting pictures of underage girls, things like that. So they've worked on really cleaning up some of the stuff that I think we can all agree is bad. Yeah. But again, they've also shut down some stuff that was just purely political speech that they didn't agree with. So, and that's a bit of a problem when somebody is using a platform to try and get a message out.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I think on that note, I think that's definitely something we can definitely bring up next week. By the way, next week, people, we have a special guest coming next week. I know James is particularly excited about this guest. I know I'm particularly excited about this guest. We have Martina Marcota coming on for an interview with us next week.
Absolutely.
So that's going to be an interesting interview. So it's I'm looking forward to it, and it's definitely going to be an interesting show. We're going to start. I guess you'd say the advertising run starts tomorrow for that, and it'll run all week until. So I'll shoot some shit to you, James, so you can post that around.
Absolutely.
Get people in. Tommy, I'll shoot some over to you. So definitely going to be a good thing, and hopefully after that, no promises, but hopefully after that, Laura Loomer. Maybe even Gavin McGinnis.
Yeah, it would be great to get some of these other people on.
Yeah, I mean, I personally am a huge fan of Gavin McGinnis. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I love the guy's opinions, and I love his approach. I love his starting of the Proud Boys. So definitely, Anyway, that being said, that is going to be the end of tonight's episode. So, James, final thoughts?
Final thoughts, man. Be kind to each other.
Awesome. Tommy, final thoughts.
I got to repeat what James said. Be kind. Pray for each other. Be good.
And I have to be the third one. I have to be, I guess we're the three musketeers here, because that's the point of this show, is don't be afraid to express your ideas, but don't destroy somebody else's. Just keep the conversation going. That's what this is about. Keep the conversation going. Don't attack, don't scream, don't yell, don't hit. I feel like I'm talking to my 4-year-old son by saying that, but,
there is one more thing I'd like to say.
What's that?
Late happy birthday to a woman I love with all my heart. America, you sexy bitch. Happy birthday. I hope you had a great one last night.
Yeah. Same here. Definitely. I can't believe I forgot that. I was over here screwing up some potato salad and hot dogs, in honor of that. Definitely. Yeah. America, happy birthday. We love you. We love you. All right, guys, that's it. Thank you all for hanging out. This show will be up tomorrow in the morning for all the world to listen to. For all of you here on the live show, love your faces.